You're gonna see some serious shit.
It is the future. The year 2015. Okay, it's not as cool as we were promised, but it's not that different really. Instead of Jaws 19, we get Terminator Jenny CCs. It's the same thing really. We need to make a future for ourselves. A future where film lovers make film podcasts about why they love film. Where we stay positive no matter what the next batshit crazy Fantastic Four reboot rumor is. Come on guys, Star Wars and Mad Max are coming back. Brad Bird's got another movie out, Pixar have too. Stick with us folks and you'll always see the bright side of movies. Don't mind the title, it's just ironic. Welcome to Movie Moan 2015!
Hello everybody and welcome to a jam-packed episode of Movie Moan 2015. We have got it all for you tonight. We've got heartbreak and disappointment and we've got joy, hopefully. As I speak, actually, it is one day before I see the movie which is hopefully going to change my life. It's certainly the movie I've been anticipating most of my life, the Death of Superman Lives documentary. I will be jumping forward into the future a little bit later on the show to tell you what I thought of it. Jamie's not going to know. Jamie's going to have to wait and watch the show just like the rest of you because we are recording tonight because we cannot wait any longer to talk about Tomorrowland, one of the other anticipated films of my life which turned into massive heartbreaking disappointment for me. Not to spoil it for you.
Phil, there's not to add to the heartbreak, but they just announced Rick Baker is retiring today.
Yes, we were going to talk about that, yeah. It's funny because, well, I guess I'll spoil it on a little note that later on our Cinematic Happy Comfort Food segment, Mr. Spencer Perry has chosen, arguably Mr. Baker's crowning achievement, an American Werewolf in London. We did not plan this because we didn't know Rick was retiring. We recorded that piece several days ago. But, heck, why not? Let's pay tribute to the man. Will you challenge that, by the way, Jamie? Will you say that there is another piece of work that he did that actually surpasses that?
I mean, I'd have to think about it only because he's got such a vast body of work that it's easy to forget all the films that he worked on, and he's won 8 Oscars, I think, quite a few. His work in American Werewolf in London it was so revolutionary for the time that they created the Best Makeup Effects category specifically to reward him the Oscar.
That's right.
Which says a lot about the influence and the influence of his work in that film.
I just think that the people I choose to do this segment, they don't get the title. I say to Spencer, okay, it's Cinematic Happy comfort food. And he says, I'm going to pick the one movie that still scares you, Phil, an American Werewolf in London. I say, thank you, Spencer, fuck you very much. But it is what it is. That's right. Next week, The Exorcist 2. Maybe. We don't know. Actually, Jamie's got a pick. I think Jamie's going to go next. We won't tell you what that pick is next, but it's something epic. Something epic from...
They know what it is.
They might know what it is. I don't want to take it for granted. Keep them hanging. Alright, folks. Well, before we get into movies of old, we do have to deal with the new. Sadly. Let's get to it. Let's talk about some classic movie moan. Joining me for Classic Movie Moan, first of all, the aforementioned Righteous and True, Mr. Jamie Williams. How are you, sir?
I'm making it. You?
I'm good. Well, we'll miss you, Rick, but we are making it. We will just remember you and your amazing body of work. Also, though, joining us tonight, talk about an amazing body of work. She made an amazing body of work on this show, I don't mind saying, and she's making her welcome return to our rebooted podcast for the first time. It's the enchanting Miss Jen Mayhew. Hello, Jen.
Hello, Phil. Hello, Jamie. It's good to be back.
I'm glad I'm glad it's this show that we've picked because, you know, obviously Jen, as you would know if you follow her on Twitter, is certainly a Disney freak, if that's not impolite of me to say. So I'm glad we chose Disney's, you know, latest original film based in some way on, you know, their theme parks and certainly based in a lot of ways on their nostalgia. And actually, that's the first point that I wanted to bring up. I don't know if you both saw the Japanese trailer for the film. You haven't? Well, what was, for the people that haven't seen it, including Jen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, maybe I just missed it, but the Japanese trailer basically spoiled everything and blew the whole thing, which is fine, I don't have a problem with that, but what they were actually saying was that in that trailer specifically, that Tomorrowland was a place where all of humanity's greatest thinkers and dreamers and imagineers would go, where they could actually, you know, live in isolation and harmony and create the best place that humanity could possibly conjure up, including Walt himself. The Japanese trailer pretty clearly said that, and I don't even think it's even mentioned in the film.
No, I don't think so. I don't remember that, because I thought about that. To me, it was funny that a lot of the online community was so looking forward to this movie, and that Japanese trailer came out, and yet these are the same guys who hated on Saving Mr. Banks, and it was sort of weird because like that was a movie that said Walt Disney was a great guy, and here we are with another Disney-funded movie about what a great visionary guy Walt Disney is, and yet they're all loving it, or at least they were giving a lot of like love up front. So I noted the hypocrisy, and yet it's not in the movie. Like I thought it was interesting.
Well, Jamie, I guess we'll start the ball rolling with you, sir. In your humble opinion, what is in the movie? What's this about? What the hell is this about?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I thought it was okay. I liked it fine. I was like you, and I was pumped to see it. I thought it looked great, and I was very anxious about it. I knew commercially the movie was never going to succeed. I mean, I was pretty upfront about, like, this isn't going to do well. This is being marketed terribly. They're treating it like a redheaded, freckled stepchild. It's a bad release date. They don't really know what to do with it, clearly. There's a lot of how do you sell it? So the writing was on the wall there, and then to hear Brad Bird's announce or flat out say, yes, my next movie is Incredibles 2, it was also kind of clear that he wasn't saying the movie didn't work, but he was saying commercially it wasn't going to work, so he was using his get-out-of-jail-free card, which is smart. But that still didn't really send any alarm bells off, because I was still looking forward to the movie, but I didn't think it was going to be the greatest thing ever, because as we talked about on Fairfield, I don't understand why Brad Bird has suddenly been elevated to the auteur status. because this is only his second live-action movie. Yeah, he's a legend in the animation field, but directing live-action features is a different process altogether. So why are we suddenly treating him this guy like he's Steven Spielberg when he's only made one movie before, and it was a franchise that was controlled, and not only a film franchise, but a vanity-driven film franchise, where the star is the producer and the one who really gives the orders, not even the studio. So really, the success of Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, and I say this with all respect, you have to kind of give it more to Tom Cruise.
I'll challenge you on that to a certain degree, in that storytelling is storytelling in film. It's an extremely hard thing to do, to tell a really good story, regardless of the technique and the format. So I would like to think, playing devil's advocate here, that yeah, I do think it's ridiculous that a guy with such a short filmography has been elevated to godhood. But it's only because we're so desperate these days to find really, really great filmmakers that we can trust and rely on. And we need gods, we do, exactly. We need heroes to believe in. So I think that's the reason, and I'm guilty of it. I'm extremely guilty of it. I remember the year that Mission 4 came out that I said, that's my most eagerly anticipated film of the year, simply because he's doing it, because I trust him this much. And obviously it goes without saying how much I was looking forward to Tomorrowland. But it is true, we were talking about this off air, that prior to Tomorrowland, the only film that Bird has created from the ground up, all himself, was The Incredibles. The Iron Giant, of course, is based on a book. It is a big change from the book, I can tell you that much, for those of you who haven't read it, but it is an adaptation nonetheless. The Incredibles was an original film. Ratatouille was a rewrite job, which he made a significant contribution to, and he made it work. And not everyone likes Ratatouille. I fucking adore it. Really? I will always do.
Those people exist?
They do, but let's not get into it. And then there's Mission 4, which I do credit him a lot with. I mean, he made it work. He made it what it needed to be.
I'm not trying to take away credit, by the way. I'm just saying is we should remember that
he's playing in someone else's sandbox.
He is totally playing with someone else's toys and someone else's sandbox. And Tom Cruise is if they're all kids, he is the gracious kid who lets you play with his toys.
Absolutely. But I just feel that myself, and I did tweet this, that I do not recognise Brad Bird in this film. The Brad Bird that I know knows how to pace a film. The Brad Bird that I know knows how to tell a really good story, regardless of the format, and I just don't get it here. And I spent most of the movie, honest to God, shaking my head.
Something tells me that you did recognise him during the 1964 sequences.
I did, and for that first 5 minutes, it was working for me.
And you should clarify, when you say the first 5 minutes, do you mean including the terrible...
Oh God, I forgot.
When I was telling you off air before Jen came to the call, we've been talking for 2 hours before we started recording here, by the way, folks. I pointed out that I knew within the first minute there was an issue with the opening exposition, which was clearly a reshoot. Because with George Clooney and what's the actor's name? I don't know the character's name.
Brit something.
Robertson or something.
Where they're having to explain to the audience that don't worry, nothing bad happened to the two leads.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of an it was very. Everything's going to turn out fine.
Yeah, it's no matter what reshoot. And it's bad. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's badly acted because there's George Clooney going, "I'm all gruff and old, and I'm all perky and young." It was bad, and I winced when I saw it. Man, I was like, "Whoa!" That was an immediate issue I had. I was like, "What are we doing with this? Why is this the opening?" And they fucked up. That was an issue early on with the editorial. That to me, that was the big issue of the movie. Is this is. And I don't mean this to sound offensive, so I don't mean to offend anybody what I'm about to say, so please, spoilers, I guess, or apologies ahead of time. This movie was retardedly edited. Because there are just choices made in this movie that you go, a good editor would have not had that. And I immediately caught it, Phil, and that's one of them. Where I'm like, the movie should have started with him as a little boy in 1964. There's your opening. So when you say the first 5 minutes, what you really mean is the
prologue.
Really the 2-3 minute part. Because that scene goes on for about 3 or 4 minutes. Mm-hmm. So really you're saying about 5 minutes into the movie, you were enchanted. And that does work, by the way. That stuff is great. There's where you should have opened the movie. So they made a huge tactical error at the beginning of the film, which to me was not in the script. That clearly had to have been a reshoot. That had to have been. That did not feel like something that was in the script stage initially. I can't believe that was always there.
And I want to point out something else as well, which I have been wrestling with, because Jamie might remember back when we reviewed Elysium, which a lot of this movie reminded me of in certain ways, that certainly the way that it's constructed. I had a big problem with Elysium in that the whole crux of the movie is about Matt Damon, this earthborn poor guy, needing to get to paradise, needing to get to Elysium. So, basic storytelling 101, to sympathise with our protagonist's plight is we should not get to Elysium until Matt Damon gets to Elysium, but we don't. Instead, we get a prologue with a bunch of poor people being blown up by Jodie Foster and all that stuff, the bad French accent, and I try not to think about it too much. And with this, it's like, okay, we're at the World's Fair, and then we go on It's a Small World. We're with the child version of George Clooney. We've got this fantastic hook in there. You know, he's immediately smitten by this captivating girl, which I get completely. There's a real cutie romance angle there, which is absolutely fine. It is, that's the word for it.
And she is single-handedly the best part of the whole movie.
She was absolutely, she stole the whole movie.
She was phenomenal. A friend of mine who saw the movie before me said, like, she actually made me Google the name, said, write this name down, you're going to remember this kid. Yeah. And boy, was she right. Oh my God, that little girl was phenomenal.
She was fantastic. And it's like, I feel like I haven't seen a lot of her. I mean, I mentioned it on Twitter the other day that the poster for the movie has Clooney, obviously, he's the star of the movie, and it has the little boy that plays him as a child, who really amounts to about less than 15 minutes.
Wait, that's him? I thought that was the little brother.
No, it wasn't the little brother. It was the boy that played him as a child.
That wouldn't make sense either, Jamie. Why would the little brother be on the poster?
It would make more sense if the little brother's in the poster, given the ending.
Yeah, and when I saw when I saw the poster before I saw the movie, I thought, well, there's a little brother, so I guess that kid has a big part. And then I'm looking, no, that's little Clooney. Yeah. And I'm like, but the main kind of characters that are kind of supporting Clooney through this whole thing are these two girls. And I'm like, how are they not on the poster? The kid with 10 minutes of screen time. It's like, I didn't even know, like, the Athena character from, like, the trailers. And admittedly, I did not see too many of the trailers going in. The first time I really kind of sat and watched it was when I saw it in front of Avengers a few weeks ago, where I really kind of, saw it and took it in. I'm like, wow, that looks great. But I'm like, you wouldn't know that there were these two girls, especially they should be totally using, like, Athena. Like, she's got so many great scenes in that.
She's so hidden from the marketing, it's just crazy.
So hit, and she completely hit. I'm watching this movie. I'm like, I had no idea that this little girl was in this movie, and she's phenomenal. So it was just lousy marketing.
And also, by the way, can I ask one other question? I don't know if I'm just being too cynical about this. Please correct me if I should be. But the movie treats it like it's going to be some really big gasp moment for us when we find out halfway through that she's a robot. And I'm just like, can we just get that part over with? Obviously, she's a robot. Give us a little credit.
It's not obvious, because when we meet Hugh Laurie later, we reintroduce his character. They even have a bizarre line of dialogue about how he's human and has to drink a shake every day that keeps him young, and it's now in chocolate flavored. And I'm sitting there going, well, why? Like, because I expected the little girl to be just ageless. I did not expect her to be a robot, actually. So that was a surprise to me when I saw the movie.
Interesting.
I thought that would have created an even more interesting dynamic between her and the Frank Walker character, George Clooney, because it's like he clearly was in love with her, and they don't mince words. They say he loved her. He was in love with her. And, like, if she can't age and he's getting older, what's that dynamic? Like, that's interesting, and it raises some interesting questions, but they make her a robot. And it was a bizarre choice, because it was such a lazy exposition with Hugh Laurie. Why isn't he a robot too? This movie had problems.
I thought the robot thing kind of worked because it was so entrenched in the Tomorrowland of the Disney theme parks. And one of the huge, when Tomorrowland was new. You don't see it as much anymore in the parks. Were the audio animatronic characters that were like these real life robotic characters. Like even in the movie opened, they were playing the song from the Carousel of Progress. There's a great big beautiful tomorrow,
Yes.
which comes from the Carousel of Progress ride that's in the Magic Kingdom in Disney. And you know, the big selling point, I remember my very first trip to Disney, which was like in the 80s, were these audio animatronic characters that were on the Carousel of Progress. They were basically robots. I mean, they weren't obviously not as lifelike as, you know, a real live actor playing a robot. But that was so part of Tomorrowland that they were so a part of even the small world to an extent with these articulated dolls that, you know, it just seemed like, yeah, of course she's a robot. They're doing an audio. I think they even mentioned animatronics at one point, and I'm like, yeah, this is kind of a throwback to the audio animatronic character. So I knew from the start that she couldn't be human, or at least, you know, she wasn't a little girl. But, you know, when it came out that she was a robot, I'm like, yeah, of course she's a robot. That makes sense.
But that makes it weird because, like, some of the choices later, like, they explain that okay, Grant, correct me, Frank is thrown out of Tomorrowland in 1984, I think they said. So he's like 25 at this point because he lost hope. And you're sitting there going, but wouldn't he have, like, you sit there thinking by the time he finds out that this little girl, he's a little boy, so it's okay, that she's not human, they can never be together, like, wouldn't that be the moment that he loses hope? And, like, instead it's like, no, but, like, why does it take him 10, 15 more years till he finally just gives up? It's a bizarre choice.
I think there's a reel missing there. I really do.
Oh my god, there's something missing there.
I also just thought it was weird, aside from the little robot character, and it says, okay, 1984. I'm like, doesn't he have parents? Is anyone wondering where he is? And, I mean, I know they showed a scene at the beginning where, like,
no, what happened was this deleted scene, the robots came in and blew up his parents.
Exactly. I was just like, I know there was a scene where, like, a dad came in and kind of, you know, gave him a hard time, and I'm like, was it that bad? Is anyone looking for this kid? It was just like, how has he been there for 25 years?
I mean, there was the part where, to answer Jamie's earlier point, where I got the gut-sinking feeling, it was a gradual process, really. I mean, because I expected once little Frank goes through the secret passage on It's a Small World and then goes through the magic door to Tomorrowland, then we were just basically going to get a cut to black and then flash forward to Brit's character, and then we don't get to see Tomorrowland until she gets to see it. So there's a little bit of mystery there. Instead, we get this whole stuff about with his malfunctioning jetpack and some really weird stuff there. Now that made me uneasy, but I hadn't given up hope for it. The moment that made me not only give up, but also gave me flashbacks to Tron Legacy. Yeah, and I think when you understand, you'll understand in a minute. You remember how in that movie we get introduced to our main protagonist, Flynn's son, Garrett Hedlund's character, because he breaks into a huge multinational corporation and sabotages their shit, and then
for the security guy who gets caught.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then he does get caught, and then we basically, get a scene at the police station. You made bail. And what we have here is a situation where Brit's character sabotages a fucking NASA launch, and then we cut to police station. You made bail. And I'm saying, bullshit, you made bail. You don't make bail for shit like this. Okay? I don't know if the Patriot Act is still ongoing in your country, but I don't care even if it is.
They've been talking about bringing it back, so when do you say that?
But you don't get to just make bail. I don't care how many strings I had to pull to call this off.
Homeland Security, not because he did mention, because they had the father who was, I don't know why that was another thing why we had a country singer in there. I don't know what demographic.
He was good though.
He was very good, but it just seemed like they were trying to appeal to some demographic with that one. But it was like,
where was the country song? You know,
yeah, exactly.
Tomorrowland.
It just seemed like
all my exes live in Tomorrowland.
That's a good one.
It seemed like something you would find on the Hallmark Channel and not so much like a summer tentpole kind of thing.
Yeah, I see. If only Tim McGraw was playing his character from Friday Night Lights,
yeah,
we would have taken a very different direction.
Definitely a different turn. But it was like, you know how many strings I pulled at Homeland Security? I guess that covered everything. I'm like, you broke into a launch pad. How is it that easy?
Heck of terrorism. I mean...
Yeah. It is. Oh my god.
How many billions lost, may I ask?
I go back to the editing issues of this movie. They gave away the key surprise of the film because by having Athena sneak into her home earlier and put the Tomorrowland pin and then have a close-up shot saying DNA accessed. So they've just, in essence, ruined the surprise of telling her dad, like, wait till you touch this pin, it's all gonna change. And the music is all building up to this moment, which is supposed to be a psych-out moment. It's supposed to make the audience laugh, like, done, ha 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 ha. But they ruined it. So it's like, that was an insert shot. Like, why did you insert that shot? You ruined a surprise by having that. Like, I immediately called bullshit when I watched. I was like, why did they do that?
And there was scenes in there
well,
it wasn't so much that scene, but it was the scene a little bit later on which distracted me, because it was just like, it was 5 minutes where I literally didn't understand what its function was, why it was there whatsoever, and it's the sequence after the big fight in the collector shop in the sci-fi store, which is a nice sequence, actually, by the way. I do want to give it...
I had issues.
We'll get to that. Okay, we'll come back to that in just a second. But after that, we get the exposition in the car. We find out that she's a robot. Brit freaks out, gets out the car. If I'm remembering it right, Athena also gets out the car, is then hit by a car, and then Brit steals the car of the guy who hit Athena.
I feel bad for that poor guy, because he's clearly like...
Yeah, I know.
It's one thing to see, like, Captain America steal cars in, like, that crap 1990 movie and say, man, what a jerk. But here we're dealing with something, like, where it's just like, okay, so we've got this poor guy, he's traumatized, because let's not forget, he doesn't know she's a robot. He doesn't know. Right. He knows she gets up, which is enough, I suppose. But still, he's hit a girl, and it wasn't really his fault, because they were fucking idiots. And then this other girl steals his car and leaves him, and I guess the other car's still there. But I'm just like, and why? Why is any of this here?
Over a child, and then when I saw them driving the truck later, I'm like, did they explain to that guy that's probably still on the side of the road what's wondering what happened to those two girls?
Again, he was killed by the evil robots.
I mean, at least if Athena had said in a really dark voice, "Get out," I would have excused it, because it's like, okay, that's funny, but it doesn't happen. I know. Anyway, but Jamie, you were saying I thought the collector scene, it was pointless, but it was a fun scene. At least I was enjoying myself. What was your problem?
I mean, I liked Catherine Hahn a lot, and I liked Keegan Key a lot. But I mean, no, my issue is obvious, and I rolled my eyes when I saw it, dude, and I couldn't help it. It was so clearly what it was. You guys know exactly what I'm about to say. That's right, Star Wars. I was like, oh, okay, we get it. You bought Star Wars. You own Star Wars. It was so eye-rolling. I normally don't act that way towards a movie, but I was like, they first show all these shots, like Star Wars stuff in the background. I'm like, okay, well, that's stupid, but we can cut away to it. That's fine.
And notice how the Star Wars memorabilia crushes the characters of this movie.
Oh, the worst part is when Key is introduced to the Star Wars theme.
Yeah, the theme comes out when
my eyes were so rolled back, I thought it was Linda Blair.
I was sitting there, I'm like, this is shameless. I mean, I was sad they blew up the store, because honest to God, there was so much cool Star Wars stuff that I much rather would be there than Tomorrowland. But it was, but yeah, it was, I remember sitting there going, this is shameless. It was really overdone.
No subtlety.
And it was, if you looked really closely, there was an Iron Giant on one of the shelves, and there was a Mr. Incredible that fell down later. And look, okay, that's cute. Those are little Brad Bird Easter eggs. But
the scene itself is fine. Like, I like the scene itself, but
this was great. But yeah, they overdid this. It's like, okay, we get it. They showed the trailer for Star Wars when I saw it, so it's like, yeah, we all know. Yeah. So it was just, it's like, we know. Just get on with the movie.
I mean, I guess, okay, we're tearing apart in terms of individual scenes, which is easy. But what I just want to do, folks, is let me just say why I'm so frustrated, and hopefully I can articulate this well enough for you to understand. The main reason that it hurts for me to talk about this is because going in, I felt this film was made for me. Personally. Now, we all have films like that, films that we take to our bosom. I think, personally, one of the reasons that Mad Max Fury Road is having such a reaction right now is that I think for some people, not only have they been waiting years for a film like that, but maybe they feel like George Miller made it just for them. I think there's a strong case for that. And I wanted Brad Bird to give me the gift of Tomorrowland, because I am very geekily passionate about the Disney parks, about Imagineering, about specifically the architecture of Epcot and of Tomorrowland at Disneyland and Disney World. I never understood, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, why Jon Favreau never made his Magic Kingdom movie. Even if he didn't make that, I'll never understand when Disney was on the theme park high of making movies out of theme parks. I'll never understand why Space Mountain never got made. As a title, that's immediate. You can make a movie out of that. I'd have friggin' made it for you, but anyway.
I'm still stunned that they didn't make Magic Kingdom, dude. I cannot believe it.
I agree. I completely agree. But one of the reasons specifically why I'm really into Tomorrowland and Epcot is because I just love the 50s vision of the future. That is to say, the vision of the future conceived by the Imagineers and the visionaries of the 50s and 60s, the dreamers of that time, who were products of a more hopeful time where anything was possible, and their version of the future reflects a future so far beyond what we've actually managed to achieve because we dared to dream it. We were supposed to be, by now, living in houses on stilts that reach into the clouds, and we're supposed to take flying cars to work, and we're supposed to be powered by safe energy, and we're supposed to be on the moon, and we can go there anytime we want. Maybe we'd have time travel, and maybe we can see ahead and have the gift of precognition, actually see our future and prevent it, and maybe we'll have robots to do our shit, and I'm rambling, but you get the idea. Now, I suppose that Tomorrowland itself, the place, has all that stuff in the movie, but you don't get to see it. I have no context for what Tomorrowland is, who the people are that live there, how they feel about it. We get no real sense of the place. And believe me, folks, if you haven't seen it yet, when I believe that's a kindly estimate based on those box office numbers, you might not have yet. You might be waiting for DVD, but believe us, folks, maybe with the exception of one or two shots, you have seen all the shots of the thriving Tomorrowland in the trailers. We thought the trailers were holding back and doing that mystery box crap on us, but they weren't. They showed us all they had to show. And because we don't spend time there, we don't care about anything that happens to it. At least I don't. It's the Zion in the Matrix sequels problem all again. So, when we get to the unbelievably thudding climax where Tomorrowland has become this desolate place, as far as I can see, its occupants now consist of Hugh Laurie and 5 guys. 5 guards and a bunch of...
Wait, Phil, wait just a second. You weren't stunned that Hugh Laurie was the villain?
Well, that too. Yes, that's right, yeah. It takes a while for them to actually...
You didn't understand that when he was twirling the mustache, that meant he was evil?
Well, it's more about the costume, isn't it? Like I said, he's got Eddie Redmayne's wardrobe from Jupiter Ascending, so you know right then and there, no nice person dresses like that. In a gown, just like...
Well, I mean, we know he's evil because, like, that when he first introduced to little Frank and he's just like, sitting there, like, trying to... Was he, like, reading a book or something? And, like, he just has a big, like, rocket pack put in front of him and, he doesn't care about this kid. You immediately know, like, this guy's evil. And then, like, it's just so funny that the movie just, again, these terrible writing and editing choices, like... Because I'm not someone who... I don't hate Damon Lindelof, like, I don't beat up on him, but it's just so...
Well, here's the thing that, I mean...
Like... I mean, think about it. Like, they have these robot characters who are killing in the name of Governor Nix, and it's supposed to be a plot twist that, wait, he knew the whole time. He wants Earth destroyed. Like, no shit!
That's true. Well, I mean, we were talking off air just before, Jamie, about... what can we pin, if that's the appropriate expression, on Lindelof versus Bird? There's one thing which you cannot hold Lindelof accountable for in any way, and it's a fucking sin that I hate, especially on movies that cost this much. There's no excuse for it. Spielberg committed this sin in a film like Hook, and Bird does it here. Tomorrowland is not a place, it's a set. And it never feels like anything more than that, especially in the climax.
It felt like a place during her... what turns out to be a hologram, or like what they call it, the fake promotional movie, when she's like sitting out when she first touched the pen, and like she's following the young girl with her parents, like that. It felt like a real place then.
I will say that was a nice idea. I was intrigued by the fact that, usually when you get the stranger in a strange town scene, she's bumping into everyone and they're all looking at her funny. Hey. It's like, yeah, hey, what's your hot rod? And all that kind of stuff. And
although they did a good job of playing against that by having her talk to the mom, and you think she's talking to her and she's actually talking to somebody behind her. Yeah, some of the kids behind her. You know.
That's right. And yeah, like you said, we saved you a seat on the shuttle, and I'm like, why? And so that was intriguing. That I liked that idea that actually what you got, was just a promo clip. It's ironic, really, when you think about it. We were all sold a lie on this movie. Tomorrowland never looked like that. It never was a place we wanted to go to.
Yeah. Well, no, I totally agree with you, because I was, like, based on the trailer, I'm like, oh, you just almost thought, like, oh, the whole climax of this movie is going to be this whole adventure inside this amazing Tomorrowland. And I felt like with the message they brought down, it's like, look, none of this is going to happen because you screwed up the planet and you screwed up you screwed up everything. The planet's going to die. I almost felt like the movie was telling us, hey, look, this was a really cool movie we were going to give you, but you screwed up the planet, so we're not giving you the cool part of the movie. Now get out and start, fixing the planet. I feel like they held back the movie. There's even a line is like, we warned you about the apocalypse, but you made TV shows and video games out of it. And I like those TV shows and video games. I'm like, am I supposed to feel guilty now? What's going on here?
Well, the irony is like it's inadvertently making a commentary about Mad Max.
Exactly.
That's true.
And I'm sort of going like, well, then I welcome the apocalypse.
But isn't it weird, though? I mean, I remember, Jamie, you, me, and Mr. Ed Douglas from Coming Soon. We had a conversation about Tomorrowland, I think even before they started shooting, before we knew anything more than the title. And I had a theory about what the movie was. And actually, it turns out I was scarily close to what it actually, at least, is trying to be. Which is that, if somebody from the 50s, with that vision of the future of what it would be, actually tried to build it, and then they could actually go forward in time to the year 2000 and see how little we'd actually come. And then, would their version of the future change, or would they still persevere with their dreams?
That's right.
And it's there, but they don't fucking do anything with it. And that's what's so frustrating. I knew going in that this movie had some potentially amazing ideas that you don't really get to go into in science fiction. I do feel that in some ways, and you can't blame the movie for this, that one of the themes going through the movie is complacency. Our inability to dream big these days, and obviously that is a theme that is explored much better in Interstellar. And you can't blame Tomorrowland for the fact that Interstellar came first, but I wouldn't blame Tomorrowland, at least that they did something with it, and they don't. And it's just like, I like the idea at the end that the dreamers are still out there and we can get them all together and we can build a.
I did love the ending, like that last scene. I loved.
It's a nice scene.
It's a very nice way to end it.
The rest of this was good. That was great. It's like a whole montage where they were just giving all these different people pins, and and here they all are, and now the movie's over, and it was just getting good. What happened? But it was, that was the ending was fantastic.
But it's like you said, the problem is it's bookmarked by the fact that it's actually about them doing a home movie and saying, and now this is how it all.
Yeah.
No, this is a story all about how they might.
It also ruins the introduction of Frank Walker as an adult.
Absolutely.
It's like, because he doesn't come until about an hour into the film now, and I guess without the opening scene, it's like maybe 50 minutes.
I think you nailed it, Jamie. I think that's why it's in there, isn't it? Because without that opening scene, they're worried the audience is going to go, "Where's Clooney?" That's why it's there.
Possible. I mean, but then again, like, he's not the lead character. It's
Well, like Jan said, if you're going into it based on the marketing, you think he is, and that's the problem. It's another movie that's been frickin' sabotaged by people who don't know how to sell it. Apart from its own problems.
Well, I mean, look, the release date was bad. I mean, we talked about that on the box office show. This is a fall release. In fact, it was originally supposed to be a Christmas release, I think Ed had said, and they moved it up to summer for no reason, just to have something there, and I thought, well, they've got to...
Having seen it, I'd rather have a bag of coal, frankly.
I think you would agree with me, though, that its commercial chances would at least be better in a Christmas or Thanksgiving release. I think you would agree with me about that.
I don't know, man. I really don't.
Even without, regardless of the quality.
I honestly just feel like with any movie like this, you do need word of mouth to carry it through, and it isn't going to have it. I'm scared about what the drop-off is going to be this weekend. It terrifies me.
It's not going to be good. It's going to...
Like 80%, possibly?
Oh, no, it's not going to be 80%. I remember Ed's his box office predictions was it would drop to second place. I disagree. I think it will drop to third place. I think Pitch Perfect 2 will maintain the second spot.
No, I was actually wondering, you mentioned before about ramifications from, like, the truck or just, like, bad storytelling. Wouldn't there also be ramifications from the fact that there was a giant rocket ship inside the Eiffel Tower? I mean, it's not just...
Oh, that's right. They totally gloss it over, don't they? Yeah.
Gonna pick these dreamers that are quietly going to make, presumably, it's this top secret project, we're gonna make the future better. But you open the Eiffel Tower in half and shot a rocket ship out. That,
Man. Well, you know what their logic is? Their logic is, but we had the shot of like all their iPhones being destroyed, so all the technology being destroyed, so no one has video surveillance of it. It's like that doesn't matter. Like,
people are gonna ask a few questions after that happens, and I'm like, isn't our people back home? It's not just like, okay, well, we quietly fix the future, and we're going to find all of these people that are going to make the future better. Oh, and a rocket ship launched out of the Eiffel Tower, and apparently everyone's just fine with that. Because I was like, that's kind of a big deal. I could see if maybe they had something they could launch out of that old abandoned, NASA launch pad that was coming down. That would have been more believable as something that would have been out of the way, that there would have been a whole lot of people seeing, but like in a major city at a major tourist attraction.
Well, not to pick on him or beat up while he's down, but this is 2 summers in a row where Damon Lindelof writes a movie with the most just mind-boggling story component that is glossed over in the third act just because they predestined how the movie's going to end. If we remember Star Trek Into Darkness, the movie ends with them curing death.
With the triple.
And they just glossed over that little part.
Although, Into Darkness also had the scene at the beginning where they cured death because Benedict Cumberbatch saved the little girl that was dying of blood disease.
Well, she was dying. Like, Kirk flat out died. Like, he was dead. They cured death. And they're just like, not a big deal.
So I didn't like Tomorrowland.
I thought it was okay, actually. We picked the hell out of it apart, but some of it was expectations. I mean, I thought it was going to be great, but I did not.
Jamie, you're going to have to let me break this down and then you explain it because I don't get it. So you agree with us, obviously, like you said. It's in trouble in the first minute because it has a horrible opening.
I knew it was an issue.
The actual scene in the movie I like, you don't like because of the Star Wars pandering, which I totally get.
I said I did like the scene. The scene's good. It's just that part was just like so eye-rolling.
But distracting as hell. Even the good scene is flawed. And we all agree that the climax is a complete thud.
Yeah.
And okay, so it has a last good minute into it, but how? I just don't get it. I don't get what's to enjoy here. It's such a fatally flawed project.
It was well acted. I think there's I like the ideas behind it. There are. It has some interest. I mean, again, that little girl is so good. She really elevates the movie.
She was, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was like just there were shots in the movie that were just gorgeous. That was just, I mean, it was, it was almost like that Jurassic Park line. They spared no expense, but it was just, I just felt like it was flat. Like it was a road trip that really wasn't going anywhere, that you couldn't see from a mile away while you were watching it. So I felt like it should have just been, it should have been more, because it's Disney and these are words you use with Disney, it should have been more magical and It should have been more adventurous. Like, I mean, almost like, like I'm falling back on just a kid movie, because this is so made for families and this is so made for kids, but like, something almost like the Goonies or like those movies that came out in the 80s where, the kid ended up in an adventure somewhere, and it was really just this kid who was terrific. I thought, like, Britt Robertson, I looked up her name, was terrific. I mean, but a lot of her reactions was just freaking out and screaming. It's like, okay, there has to come a point where you're just accepting the fact that wild things are happening to you and just move forward. But they gave her too many scenes where she was like flipping out and screaming and having a fit over something. I'm like, okay, get it together, let's keep moving. And it was just, it just felt so flat. I mean, Clooney looked like he was having a good time. I mean, he was fine.
He was good. I thought he was good, but actually, I'm gonna agree with Devin Faraci to a degree. I think Hugh Laurie should have played Frank Walker.
I could have seen that. He would have been really good.
That would have been a better choice of like the grizzled old bastard.
I know.
Because Clooney's he's too Clooney. He's like, I'm still cool George Clooney, but I'm just
when they went to 1984 and he was getting, kicked out of Tomorrowland, and I'm like, well, that was around the time he was on The Facts of Life, so I was waiting to see if they, like, digitally inserted the mulleted George Clooney.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
You thought Mrs. Garrett was gonna, like, escort him out?
When he had the mullet and the long hair, you know, it was just
No, he had the mullet on Roseanne. I don't remember did he have the mullet on Facts of Life?
Maybe I like.
We have to look this up, kids, while we look.
I know we have to go googling George Clooney.
The George Clooney sitcom '80s archive show will be right back.
The first ER sitcom before ER
with Ellie Gould.
I think we're veering off the point slightly. If we could just get back on track here.
This is George Clooney's '80s look. But yeah, it was just, you know, and the movie just felt really flat. It was just like, I was really looking forward to it. And I'm like, you mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm a huge Disney fan too. And then when it started and you heard the Carousel of Progress song, and even in the Disney logo, you saw it in Tomorrowland, and you saw it in the Disney logo as the movie started, Space Mountain was in there. And every Disney fan I know looked out, like, did you see Space Mountain? Space Mountain was in there. And when they showed the rockets going off to Mars, it reminded me of the old Magic Kingdom Tomorrowland ride that was a mission to Mars, which was on my very, very first trip to Disney. And it was ancient then, but you could tell it was like this old classic ride where you got into like a simulator. It was before like Star Tours or any of these like 3D simulators where you sat in a rocket ship and you flew to Mars, and it just felt like old school, like Tomorrowland, Disney, and Epcot. And, you know, and I love going to the Disney park, so it's kind of fun. It's like, oh, I can, you know, kind of, you know, feel like I'm there. And I mean, and to an effect, it did, but it just, it was like a boring trip to Disney World.
And there's no such thing.
No, there isn't.
I think that's the best description I've ever heard of it, because that sums it up. It is a boring trip to Disneyland. It is an anomaly, folks. It is a movie that has all the ingredients to make it just a really, really great piece of pulp, nostalgic science fiction, and it just sits there like a big, lame egg. And I just couldn't believe it. I literally just couldn't believe the potential that was being squandered there. I will get over this. I'm fine. I'm alright. You don't need to call me. I'll live with it. But it is really, really... it's taught me a lot, Jamie. I'll tell you what, because I think Brad Bird probably was the last filmmaker where I go in as a fanboy, or have been at this point, where I probably have put too much expectations on the guy with such a short filmography. I'm like, oh, whatever he does, I'm there, you know. I trust him implicitly. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. My box office prediction was based on that. It was based on pure faith in him as a filmmaker. It's not fair to him to put so much expectation on the guy. I shall... He's got his vanity project out the way. Hopefully he can move on from here. I don't know what he's going to do in the future, whether he's going to even go back to live action.
Remember that movie he was going to do that we wanted to see called 1902?
Yeah, that's right, yeah, the Earthquake movie, I think.
I still want to see that movie.
Yeah, I love the idea of him doing a disaster movie with balls, you know.
Does that mean you're going to watch San Andreas this weekend?
I might not have a choice, man. If it's between this and San Andreas, I'll go for option 3, ritualistic suicide, thank you. No, I'll see if Mad Max is on again, of course. As will many people. This is the thing. This is all good for Mad Max. People just keep going back to that because we don't have a choice here. We really don't. So folks, it's the moment you've been waiting for. Certainly it's the moment I've been waiting for since 2006. I have seen the documentary by John Schnepp, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened. I've been waiting for this since 2006, specifically because I remember when they announced the big Superman movie box set, 14-discer. I remember, of course we didn't know what was in the discs at the time, and I was like, oh man, I really, really hope they put together a big documentary about all the aborted Superman 5 projects that never came to fruition. And of course, they didn't, and we've been waiting all this time for somebody to tell this story. And as much as I'm going to talk about The Death of Superman Lives here tonight, what's so amazing is that this is just one small part of the story. I've seen this documentary now, but I want to see documentaries about the other versions, pipe dream though it may be. I know that we're going to apparently get now one about the George Miller aborted Justice League movie, but I want to hear about Fly by the McG version. I want to hear about Wolfgang Petersen's Batman vs Superman. I want to hear about Aronofsky's Batman Year One. True enough, the stories may not be as interesting as this one, but I'd still like to see them. Maybe I'm just greedy. But you know what, folks? So will you be after you've seen this documentary. There's a real trend that's going on right now, which I am just absolutely head over heels in love with. I have no problem whatsoever. Documentaries about movies that never existed, or at least we never got to see. We've had Jodorowsky's Dune, which I've recommended on the show before and is absolutely superb. We've got this one. We've got a documentary coming up in the next couple of months called Doomed, about Roger Corman's Fantastic Four movie, which was made, you just never were supposed to see it. And while I can't in honesty put The Death of Superman Lives up there on the pedestal with Jodorowsky's Dune, it is still an absolutely fascinating story about a movie which would have celebrated pure creativity. When we look back and reflect right now about the Superman movies that could have been and the Superman movies that never were, what we have to appreciate is, you know, okay, we saw it through a filter. All we heard about were the bad rumours of what it was going to be. But in terms of Superman Lives, I can't honestly tell you whether it would have been a good movie. What I can tell you, it would have been a Tim Burton movie. There's no question about that. It would have been, in every way, really, really interesting. It probably would have had no plots, no 3-act story structure, because Burton just doesn't do those. The action probably wouldn't have been very good because Burton's not into that either, but it would have looked amazing. It probably would have had several sequences that were pure genius, pure creativity, in only the way that Burton can do. And what this documentary conveys to us more than anything is that Burton did have a take on this character. I think before this documentary, we've all had this perspective about Superman Lives. I say that because I've been guilty of it too. That Burton didn't understand Superman, didn't get this character, was just taking a paycheck job because it was a hell of a sweet paycheck, 10 million I believe, which he got anyway because he had a pay-or-play deal. But no, when you really listen to the story, which Burton, thank God, actually gets to be a part of, you understand that no, he got it. He understood. At least he understood a facet of Superman's character. We take for granted all the time that he is an alien. And yes, we've had in Man of Steel a real alien arrival story, but make no mistake, folks, when you hear the story of what Superman Lives was going to be, this in every way would have been the ultimate exploration of Superman as an alien life form, something that we cannot really attach ourselves to. We can never empathise with Superman, we can never be like Superman, we can never even feel like we are Superman. All the things that were going to happen to him in this movie, and all the technology and all the world, the life forms, the aliens, the environments he was going to go to, we're talking about stuff that was so freaking crazy that it just would not have, there would have been a complete disconnect. You could not be a part of this world. I feel like Burton's the kind of filmmaker who tells those stories. You cannot imagine yourself as Batman in his movies, I don't think. There's a disconnect there because he's such a weird character, the way that Keaton plays him and the way that Burton presents him. And I think it definitely would have been the same with a Nicolas Cage Superman. On that point, of course, you all want to know about Superman himself, about Nicolas Cage. Well, what we get to see in this movie, which of course you would have already seen the pictures of at least, are the costume tests. Cage himself does not get to be part of the documentary. I found out in a Q&A subsequently that Cage is interested very much in seeing the film, and they're hoping they might get an interview with him for the special features for the DVD. Who knows? All I can say is that I do feel in this documentary, interview or not, Cage is represented. And his own perspective is shown for us. When we see these costume tests, we get the audio too. We get to hear Burton and Cage talking as they're putting on the different costumes, talking about their perspective on Superman and talking about their perspective on Clark Kent. And this is the real piece of news that you've been waiting to hear about, because we've seen now Cage in the suit. We think, okay, well, you know, we've seen it. What really new are we going to be shown in this documentary? Folks, we get to see Cage as Clark Kent, his portrayal. Not a screen test, of course, because he didn't need to screen test, but we get to see him put on a potential Clark Kent costume, which to me basically looked like Tommy was so
before Tommy Wiseau, the star of The Room, and it looks like his portrayal was going to be slightly like that. Just classic Cage, completely aloof, specific candor, lines delivered in a really unique, off-kilter way that only Cage can deliver. You know, we get to, I can't really do the best Nicolas Cage impression, but he actually starts to almost perform a scene, and I don't know if it would have been in the movie, but he starts mentioning how, Lois, we're both up for a journalism award. Who'd you think it's gonna go to? You or me? You know, he starts acting out this little scene while he's wearing this Clark Kent costume. And he talks about the potential of a scene where him as Clark Kent would just be walking down the street of Metropolis, and you would see him mingled with all the other comparatively normal people, and you start to realise that actually the concept was quite genius, because the concept, if I understood it right from what I saw, was that if you did see this guy walking down the street, yeah, you might think he's an alien, but you would never believe he was Superman. In a lot of ways, that's a really genius idea, and I really, really like that. If that's what they were going for, I get it, and I think we would have as well. That was fantastic. Apart from that, casting. There's been a lot of rumours over the years about, okay, apart from Cage, who was actually cast? We heard a lot of names throughout the years, but who actually signed on the dotted line? The documentary clarifies, nobody did. It's quite clear who was going to play these parts, because no shit, they were going to star in a Tim Burton directed Superman movie, but no one actually officially signed on. Kevin Spacey was their choice for Lex Luthor. Obviously he would have signed on. Chris Rock was their choice for Jimmy Olsen. He got the call about it while he was filming Dogma, and he got really, really excited, and obviously he was going to play the part, he just never got to sign on. Christopher Walken, he was their choice for Brainiac. Obviously, if Christopher Walken's going to do a bit part in Sleepy Hollow as the Headless Horseman, no shit, he's going to play Brainiac, so he would have been our Brainiac. And then, there's the Lois thing. Who was going to play Lois Lane? What they clarify is that John Peters, the producer, met with several actresses, including Julianne Moore, and he wanted to meet with Sandra Bullock, and obviously, no shit, Sandra Bullock was the #1 choice. But immediately we then cut to Burton, who says, I must have been off that day. So you get to wonder, would Sandra Bullock have been Lois Lane? Clearly Burton had his reservations about it, so there's no real way to know who would have played Lois Lane. And then also there's the interesting idea, which you might have heard about from the later incarnations of the script, that Lex Luthor and Brainiac were going to at some point merge into one being called Lexiac, or Luthiac. I think it was Lexiac. And they never really clarified, because I don't think they'd figured out who was actually going to play the part at that point, whether it was going to be Spacey or Walken, or both. Can you imagine a Spacey, Walken hybrid character? Doesn't that sound like the most amazing concept you've ever heard of in your life? And that's what this movie was going to be, folks. Make no mistake, I cannot tell you whether it would have been a good movie, but I can tell you it would have been a movie of amazing concepts. Not only do we get to see the test footage, we get to see the costume tests, we get to see the fittings, we get to see the tests of the regeneration Superman suit, which you might have seen before, which all lights up, which truly would have been something that had never been seen on screen before. We also get to see costume art, concept art, set design work, action set piece artwork, things that we have actually never seen before. There's a lot of it that was completely new to me, and I thought I'd seen it all. And it is some of the most delicious, beautiful, inspiring concept art I have ever seen in my life, and this is really where the heart of the movie lies. They are able to show us this sumptuous feast of imagery, and you just drink it up. And you start to see, now, okay, bear in mind that concept art looks better than movies usually, for a reason. It's concept art, it's proof of concept. It's like, this is how good it could look, give us some money. Or, here you go, toy manufacturers, this is what it's going to look like, make it look as good as you can. And, you know, usually when the movie comes out, they have to scale it back a bit. But still, if they'd even managed to pull off a fraction of what they were going for here, this movie would have looked incredible and just like Tim Burton's Batman movie. You can argue about its merits, its pros and its cons, but you cannot deny that movie has images, set pieces, moments, costumes, sets, moments that are burned into your brain for the rest of your life that you will never forget. And I feel very, very confident that Superman Lives would have had the exact same stuff in it. That's what makes it a real tragedy that it never got made. And in that way, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, is a complete success as a film, because that's what John Snett made it to do. He wanted to convince us, let's pull our heads out of our arses, let's stop being snarky about this. Just because it's different, just because it's not our Superman, does that mean that different is bad? No, different is unique, different is cool. I feel the same way about this movie the way that I'd feel about Superman Returns. I feel that nobody else in the world could have made a Superman movie the way Bryan Singer did, and cinema is richer for having it. I feel the exact same way about Superman Lives. I feel that cinema would have been richer for having it. I don't think, in all honesty, that the cinematic landscape of the comic book movie would have changed much at all. I really don't. I really feel that we would have been in exactly the same place that we are right now with the shared universes. Yes, it's possible, actually it's damn near certain that we wouldn't have had Superman Returns if this movie had been made. But we still would have had Man of Steel, I guess. Problem is, with Burton movies, is you would have had this, and then, let's assume it had been a huge success, then you'd need a sequel. Assuming you could even get Burton to do one, which after his experiences on Batman Returns is, to put it bluntly, unlikely. You would have had to get someone else to do a sequel to that movie. It would have been impossible. It would have been stuck in development hell, and probably if Superman Lives had been made, the sequel wouldn't have been. That's my gut feeling on it. No way to know, of course, but that's the way that I feel about it. But still, as a movie, god damn, I wish this had been made. It's not all perfect, I will say. I do believe that the story does need some clarification, as in the story of the movie, the actual plot itself. The movie does sometimes talk in a little bit of shorthand, as in, they talk about the concept of Lexiac as if we have read the script. I'd actually forgotten completely that they were even going to do that. I suddenly, as soon as they talked about it, it switched on that part of my brain and I remembered, but I was watching it with an audience and I was just wondering, okay, obviously, I might be the only person in this audience who has read that script. What do the other people here think about that? I mean, it's kind of glossing this point over, so Joe Dorowski's Dune kind of gives us a pretty clear picture in a lot of ways of what the story would have been, and they show you specific sequences in storyboard form. They really paint the picture of how that movie was going to open, for example. And in Superman Lives, The Death of Superman Lives, excuse me, they kind of dart around the different plot points that would have happened in the story, and it's a little bit disjointed in that regard. I personally feel like a much cleaner approach would have been taking us through the story of the movie, beat by beat, scene by scene. Well, maybe not that, but certainly in terms of its 3-act structure, take us through the story in the order that it was going to be told, and tell us about these concepts as it's unfolding. As it is, it kind of just jumps all over the place. It talks about first, you know, the concept of Brainiac and his menagerie of creatures that he was going to have stored on his spaceship. Then it talks about Superman himself. It talks about this concept of him basically when he was a baby and launched in the rocket ship. Jor-El gave him the gift of this little companion who's basically like a Kryptonian robot teddy bear, who later on in the movie, when Superman dies, actually becomes part of the regenerative suit that Superman wears. And then we jump around a little bit more. We talk about Lois Lane, and we talk about how, you know, Superman was going to ask Lois to marry, and they were going to talk about having a child and whether Superman could even conceive with her, and he was going to basically they were having a dinner date, I believe, and in order to, like, just burn off steam and get rid of his stress, he, like, flies out the building and then circles around it 50 times just to burn off some steam. And then we talk
much later in the movie about the about the Doomsday fight, which obviously would have happened very early on in the movie, it kind of just jumps around all of these different concepts and these different story beats. And I just wonder, like, I can deal with it because I'm an Uber fan, and I'm sure you can deal with it too, but I just wonder for the general audience. Not that this movie was really made for a general audience, but you just wonder how they're going to be able to, you know, deal with these concepts, and could they actually follow the story? I came out of the movie feeling like I had seen the movie, like I knew what Superman Lives was going to be in its basic concept, but I do feel it could have been stronger if they'd actually, you know, told the story, really told the story and what it was going to be. Now, maybe it's the wrong thing to say that the movie should be catering for a general audience, because this, in a lot of ways, is the ultimate geek documentary, but I can say with utter confidence that Jodorowsky's Dune, you can play that movie for anybody, and anybody could find that story fascinating. I truly believe that. I honestly don't think you can say the same for The Death of Superman Lives. I think it's a little more niche, as universal as the character of Superman is. So that's a flaw. I don't think it's perfect, but you got to understand, I'm an uber passionate Superman fan, so it's going to be very, very hard to hit all the buttons for me. As it is, it's an extremely entertaining movie. I wanted to mention a couple of the final thoughts on it, and by the way folks, I think what will happen is that I'm doing my short version blab right now because I'm still so high on it, and I know I'm not being the most articulate, I never am when I'm on my own. But I think that when the movie's had its general release, we'll do a little reunion with Jamie and we'll talk about it again when I've got his thoughts on it, because I'd love to hear his thoughts on this. But I have a couple of final thoughts. Number one is that in terms of surprises, I'm not sure I want to spoil this. Fuck it, I'll just tell you. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. We obviously see all the costume tests, but the real treat at the very end of the movie is that we get to see what I assume were the final costume continuity Polaroids for the suits. Not the regenerative suits, because I don't think they had finalised that one, but the actual initial Superman suit that he would wear before he is killed. Looks like they nailed that version down, and we get to see the shots. I mean, the shots that we get to see, they're professional, they're properly lit. These are the kind of Polaroids that you actually stick on a magazine cover. So it feels like in a lot of ways that, you know, they nailed it, they got the suit down, and it looked fantastic. It's the suit. I mean, it's, you know, it's red, it's yellow, and it's blue, and it's got the cape and everything. The only thing that I don't think that they had nailed was what the hair was going to be. We forget it now, but of course at the time Superman did have a mullet, and the reason that Cage has long hair in a lot of these shots that we see, it's not because he'd just come off the set of Con Air, it's because Superman was rocking the long hair for a while and they were seriously considering that as a look. But they also do a lot of shots with the short hair, so what they hadn't nailed down clearly was the look of their hair. They didn't know what they were going to do for that. I'm guessing personally they were going to go short hair for the initial opening of the movie, and then when he comes back they'd go long hair, because that just makes sense. I think that's the way that they do it personally, but we don't know that for sure. But that's a real treat to know that they had got that far. They had nailed the initial Superman costume, and Cage looks... well, Cage looks like Cage in the Superman suit, but you know what? It works. It looks good. Looks good to me. Another thing I wanted to mention, it's really, really crazy, but John Schnepp confirmed that they managed to obviously do an interview with a lot of people, a lot of costume artists, a lot of concept artists, special effects technicians, the writers of the movie, Kevin Smith, and of course Burton himself. All those contributions are essential to making the movie what it is. But so is John Peters' contribution. John Schnepp confirmed in the Q&A that they managed to get the interview with John Peters in April. Literally a month before this movie was finished, they managed to get the interview with John Peters, and then they had to drastically re-edit the movie to include that in there. I literally cannot imagine this movie without him in it. He makes this movie. In a lot of ways, it's his story. And I want to just clarify something. I've heard a lot of reviewers say, John Peters is the hero of this movie. He's a misunderstood guy. Yeah, he's a little goofy, but no, guys. John Peters is a fucking nut. As he's portrayed in this movie, this guy is fucking nuts. And that's fine, because a lot of producers are fucking nuts. He just is so brazen about it. We get into the horror stories that you might have heard about how he was absolutely obsessed with Brainiac's ship being a skull, how when the concept artists were manically tooling away on giving Peters everything he needed, that Peters would come in with a focus group of ladies and his children who would, without even acknowledging the artists who were in the room, they would just immediately start pointing at all these designs and saying, crap, 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 that's alright, crap, crap, and immediately tearing apart their work, which was obviously they found quite insulting. One of the co-producers was headlocked to the ground by John Peters, to which John Peters basically gives this amazing, hilarious rebuttal, and mentions, by the way, that he has fought 500 guys. So whenever I talk about John Peters in the future, I'm going to just say, John, I fought 500 men, Peters. But it's insane to think that Peters could not have been in this movie. But he is, in some ways, a hero, I suppose. I get what they're saying, and the fact that he was determined to make this movie because he wanted to see this story told. He wanted to do the wildest, craziest, science fiction-iest, most imaginative movie you could possibly imagine, and he was absolutely determined to make it happen. In a lot of ways, he reminds me of the Salkinds, the producers of those Christopher Reeve Superman movies. They got movies made with a ferocity and a tenaciousness, and they spent the earth on delivering huge spectacles for us. And yes, you know, they got the money through a lot of nefarious means, but they were determined to make sure these movies looked great, and Peters was determined to do the same thing. It's weird how, you know, we talk a lot about the horror stories of how Warner Brothers was just interested in selling the toys, man. All this concept art, we just gave it over to Kenner Toys so they can actually start making the toys, man. It's all about selling the toys. No, that doesn't come up in the documentary whatsoever. It was all about making a great looking movie. Not necessarily a great movie, I'm not sure about that, but certainly an amazing, crazy, imaginative movie. And it would have been. And cinema is really at a loss for not having it made. It's a real shame. And the documentary within every frame reminds you of that. For that, I am incredibly grateful. I fucking love this movie. It is released worldwide digitally on July the 9th, and I encourage everybody to see it, especially everyone listening to this show. I think you're really going to love it. It certainly was worth the wait, and as I said to the filmmakers during the Q&A, I felt like, in a lot of ways, that I have finally seen Superman Lives. So I'd just like to say once again, thank you to filmmaker John Schnepp and to his team. You did it. It's awesome. Thank you so much. Right, folks, well, on that note, it's time to move on. Marvelling at the future, it's taking a little break, a little hiatus. What we have instead is something that we've been waiting to do for a long time. Myself and Mr. Matt Thompson are going to settle ourselves down and talk about our favourite game series in the world, Mass Effect, and how you could genuinely make it into a movie. If we can get past the feminist angle. Let's see what we can do. If you don't know what Mass Effect is, don't worry, we're going to explain it all for you on the latest episode of Memo to the Executives.
I got an idea for a movie. I got an idea for a movie. Doesn't everybody?
So, welcome to a segment we've been wanting to do for a few months now, folks. Last time on Memo to the Executives, we talked about how you could actually make the video game series Assassin's Creed into a half-decent film. And actually, I believe we came to the conclusion at the end of that show that you shouldn't. So let's try again. I vowed, folks, not to waste your time again unless we can be sure that the subject we're talking about actually has a good chance of being a good film, nay, maybe a great one, maybe a great franchise even. So myself and my guest, Mr. Matt Thompson, firmly believe that about Mass Effect. Now, at this point, I'd be surprised if you haven't at least heard of Mass Effect in passing, but don't worry. ultra passionate fans that we are of the source material, we are not going to leave you in the dust, dear friend. The discussion tonight is going to be non-fan friendly, and I make no promises, folks. We're recording this now, we don't know what's going to happen. This discussion might be a 2-parter, it might be a 3-parter. There is so much to talk about, you have no idea. With that in mind, Matt, and I am ambushing you on this point, would you like to take a shot at explaining to the good folks at home what Mass Effect is? Not the story, we'll get to that, but just what it is in terms of actual gameplay. What is it?
In the simplest terms, it's an RPG. You are playing the character of Commander Shepard, and you, as Shepard, have to race to stop a villain named Saren, who is going to do very bad things. And to stop him, you must recruit a crew of interesting, likable people, not named Ashley. And in doing so, you have to save the universe. So it's pretty great stuff.
I'll go with that. Yes, folks, I mean, it is another one of those, I guess you'd call it a hybrid game. It looks like a third-person shooter, but nay, good folks, it is more than that. It is a shooter if you want it to be. It could also be a telekinetic energy rip-apart blaster if you wish to play the game as that kind of chap. But more than that, it is simply a good old-fashioned change the universe story where every aspect of the story is multiple choice. It might just appear immediately that the choices you make are simply dialogue choices. You can choose to be a jerk, or you can choose to be neutral, or you can choose to be really, really nice to everybody. But it is more than that. You're eventually going to realise as you play it that the choices that you make have wide-running ramifications. Like if you choose to be nice to a certain person, they will come back later on and they'll be a changed person. If you choose to be a dick to that person, we'll find out later they died in some horrible blimp accident or something. I digress, but you get the idea. And it's even more than that. But the point is that Mass Effect is, and was at the time that it was first released, the first game came out at the end of 2007, it was multiple choice, and the pitch right then and there was, we are making a trilogy. This better sell, because we are making a trilogy whether you like it or not, and the choices that you make are not just going to impact how the story plays out in this game, but it's also going to play out in 2 more sequels, and you're actually going to see choices that you make in the first game 4 years later finally pay off in another game if you have the good grace to stick with us that long. And because the story is one of the best ever told in video games, and the characters are some of the most memorable that have ever shown up in a video game, nay, science fiction, I would say, we did stick around, and at this point it has become a really, really celebrated video gaming trilogy which has a very, very devout following, waiting to see filmmakers fuck it up and fail. And at the same time, of course, we're waiting for the next game to come out, and we are really, really chomping at the bit about that. Me and Matt just talked about, we've just been playing The Witcher 3, which just came out, and certainly it's scratching that Skyrim itch for me, but it's also, the more I play it, the more I just realise, man, I need another one. I need another Mass Effect, and we need it damn soon. And it ain't going to be this year. At this point, I'm not even sure it's going to be next year. I haven't got a clue.
4 years between games, at best. It's, our best case scenario is 4 years between Mass Effect 3 and the new one. It's just painful.
It is. Well, I mean, Matt, how much do you... And I'm going to ask this question specifically, not how much do you love Mass Effect? What I mean when I ask that is, how much do you love Mass Effect, but how close are you to it? So... You know, we're talking about film tonight, we're talking about adaptation. You know, can you detach yourself from your love enough to give the filmmakers a chance, at least, to make a film about it?
I absolutely can detach myself. I will say it is harder to detach myself than it would be for just about anything else. I don't think it's a stretch to say that if I had to pick a favorite video game ever, and I play a lot of video games, it's really kind of uncomfortable. But my favorite video game is probably Mass Effect 2. I adore that game, and I love the first and third games as well. So I certainly have preconceived notions of what I think the film should be and what I think they should carry over to the film, that maybe I'll grumble if they don't do such things. But you know what? I believe in myself. I can detach myself. It'll be hard, but I can do it. How about you? Can you do that, Phil?
I think so. I really do think so. Well, for one thing, folks, I can detach myself from my love of Mass Effect simply because it would be folly to do otherwise. Now, I played the trilogy on PC, and I played it as it was happening, and I felt really, really good about the choices I made in the story. You see, the genius of Mass Effect is that when we talk about player ownership, that Mass Effect is the reason that we talk about player ownership. It has one of the best told stories in all video game history, in my opinion, but it made you, the player, feel like the writer and director. It made you were the one who told that story. That's its genius. Well, it made you feel that you were telling the story, even though you really weren't. But the story that I told in Mass Effect, it's my story. And I feel really, really good about the choices that I made. But I played it, for example, in the first game, folks, you have two human companions. A male one named Caden, who's was a bit boring, really. But it's only because he's, really bound to duty and stuff like that. But he's also, enhanced, and he's got really cool powers and stuff. And, he's a cool guy. He's by your side. He's loyal to the end and all that stuff. And you also have Ashley, who's a lady, and she's we'll get to that. But she's also, she's more spunky and she's flirtatious and she's very, very driven, and she's definitely, no question, the more compelling character. When we get into the third act of the first game, you have to make a choice, and the game makes it very, very clear. You save one, you let the other one die. There is no way out of this. There's no third option. You have to make a choice. I made the choice that felt right for my story. I killed Ashley. I thought, okay, because I was coming into it with a cinematic mind. I'm much more of a film person than I am a game person. I go to games for stories. It's the only reason I go to them now. I can't play COD games. I can't play anything else with a friggin' thinly veiled story. I just can't do it. I have to play games with a compelling story. And I thought, okay, if I'm a filmmaker, it's quite obvious that the more compelling character, the one that it's really going to hurt like a motherfucker to lose, that's the one that's got to go. So I let Ashley die, and I never regretted it, but it's always fun now to watch clips on YouTube of people who've managed to play the entire trilogy the other way with Ashley as a character. And
it feels like a weird alternate universe. Sorry to jump in there, but yeah, just watching those clips, it's like, I know that can happen. It just feels so weird that it's not my story.
But the point is that I can watch them, and I can see it, as you say, as a what if, as an Elseworlds, and I accept it fine, and I feel envious of those people, because I tell you, folks, Caden doesn't get much more interesting, quite honestly. I kind of, especially in 2, he's a bit of a dick in 2, and I kind of regretted, motherfucker, why did I let you live? But I suppose Ashley is the same. It's the same kind of scene. I digress here, folks. But it's certainly weird, so I know that I can detach myself from it. Definitely. Here's the problem, folks, and this is what we're going to have to tackle. Given how great the games are, how huge the story is, I'm not even sure in this episode whether we'll even go into the story in detail. We might broach that later, folks. That's a whole other issue of how you actually adapt it. What are the games about? What are the characters about? Who do we keep in the story? Who do we lose? All that. We'll get to that. But look at the games. Even if you've not played them, you can see in the stills just how amazing it looks. How, I'm going to say it, photoreal the characters look. And never mind how real they look, it's how real they feel to us as people. And they do. So we get into the conversation of why make it into a film. We get back to my principal argument for why it seems utter folly to adapt any modern game into a film. There is no evolution of the material. It was exciting to see someone turn the Super Mario Brothers from 8-bit pixels into flesh and blood, however the end result turned out. But it feels like devolution to see someone turn the characters of Mass Effect, who already are, even though they're not flesh and blood performers, they act as well as flesh and blood performers. They're not video game avatars. They're real to us. We care about them. We know how they sound. We can't imagine them sounding any differently. And we've lived with them for more than 100 hours. Boy, that's a kindly estimate of a video game trilogy at this point, which has the luxury to take its sweet-ass time in making sure each one of those characters has resonance, has pathos, has goals and ambitions, and has a complete arc of their own, unless you decide to cut it tragically short, and that's in your power too. But it all gets paid off, and even film trilogy, it's going to lose an awful lot of that. So that argument is going to loom heavy over everything we discuss here. And I have a weapon to counter it. Before we even get to that, though, if they're really going to do this, and by the way, we don't actually know, it's been rumoured for a while, Legendary Pictures is supposed to be producing it, but I think it's been a couple of years since they've actually announced it, and everything's been dark ever since. Matt, if you have a pulse on the gaming community, what was their going to be reaction to just the idea of doing it? Is the same as that, same as what I've just described, or maybe they're like, no, give it a go? I don't know.
I think they would say give it a go, but I think it would be with a very healthy amount of skepticism. Certainly, video game movies have a great tendency to not be satisfying. So I don't think you would see the excitement of something being adapted. It's not a really good title, but it's still something out there. Like, when they announced The Hobbit, people were excited. They bring Star Wars back, people were excited. Yada, yada, yada. I don't think you get that, because I think people would sort of naturally gravitate towards, yeah, but it's probably going to suck. But at the same time, I think people would be very interested in seeing it.
I have another theory about it, which is one of those things that, I certainly think the game makers are conscious of when they hand over the rights and stuff. It's like, no matter how much effort we put into it, and no matter how many millions of people play it, and certainly, we're in an age now where video game sales can rival movies, maybe even top them, but there's still a whole audience out there, a whole bunch of quads and demographics that have never played these games, will never experience this story and these characters unless, they can lazily just sit their arse down in an IMAX theatre for 2 hours and experience it that way. So I often feel like, if a video game player is open to the idea of doing Mass Effect as a film, what they're open to is the idea of, now everyone will see. Now everyone will know how great it is, because they're going to make it as a film, and they're going to have the emotional payoff I felt sitting with a controller in my hand on my own in the room. I'm going to experience that now with an audience of 500 people. That's exciting. Maybe that's part of it.
That's absolutely exciting. I tend to be a little more pessimistic about it, I suppose, in this world of people grading adaptations, whether on television or film, of books purely based on how faithful they are to the text. As in, this plot point has to be exactly the same as the book, this line has to be exactly the same as the book. I tend to think those people almost want a replacement for the book so that they don't have to actually exert the effort to read anymore. I sort of think with this it would be kind of the same thing, where a certain chunk of the audience would think, great, now I have this 2-hour version and I don't have to play the game anymore. But again, I'm a pessimist, so, ignore me.
So you don't really... It's not one of the hardest games, in my opinion. You don't have to...
Mass Effect 3 has a narrative mode, where literally they make the combat the easiest thing possible so you can just experience the storyline.
Yeah. There's no even boss battle at the end. Well, boss battles are arbitrary. Anyway.
Spoiler alert, Phil.
Sorry, I digress. Anyway... That argument is going to loom over what we talk about, but the weapon that I have to counter it, why this one franchise could actually work as a film, the one thing that makes a film adaptation potentially exciting is how a film, as a medium, stands in complete contrast to what defines Mass Effect as a game. Multiple choice. It's not hyperbole, folks, when we say that every single one of us that's played Mass Effect has played a different version of it. I've never even talked to Matt about the choices that he made. It's going to be really interesting as we go through that to discuss that. But at every step of the game, folks, you have to make choices. Now, most of the time, it is about choosing which characters live or die. Sometimes it's a nasty bastard who really should be put down like a dog, but who you may decide to show some mercy to. Sometimes it's a crewmate who you've been fighting beside for the last 30 hours of gameplay, and sometimes you get to commit genocide of an entire race, or not. Depends what you do, but whatever you do, you're in control, and then the entire rest of the story conforms to your choice and becomes different than the next player version. And Mass Effect is the reason that we talk about player ownership, as I said. So a film, it's not going to give you that satisfaction. The Mass Effect film is going to be the story told by the filmmakers, which is both a potentially amazing thing and potentially will just make fans despise it even more than they normally do with other video game movies. When video game movies get made, you know, today, they do listen to the fans and they do stick to the source material, and the fans hate it anyway. The fans say it's what they want it to be true, but then the movie's just copying something that you will always prefer because you lived it, you played it, and it's not surprising in any way. And to the casual viewer of a film, it just seems goofy anyway. But when Mass Effect comes out as a movie, when it hits the screen, and those, I presume that it's going to be a straight adaptation in terms of the key moments, the memorable moments that everybody remembers, those great moments are going to be represented, but you, the player, the die-hard fan, me and Matt, we're going to be on the edge of our seat just like everybody else, because presumably, as long as the movie works and we invest in the characters, we're not going to know what happens next either, because we're not in control. I find that tremendously exciting. I don't know about you, Matt.
Yeah, I certainly find it exciting. At the same time, as a filmmaker, I mean, not me as a filmmaker, but from a filmmaker's perspective, I do think you can't really think about what the fans are going to think about it in regards to their choices. I mean, the highest selling Mass Effect game sold 5 million copies. Assuming Mass Effect came out and made as much money as it should make, several times more people than that are going to end up seeing the film. The key is, I think, locking down on the strongest story path you think to support a film and to support those characters, and just play it out to the best of your abilities that way. Whether video game fans are disappointed, whether they feel it's repetitious based on what they saw, again, just make the best movie that you're going to make. Those people will be disappointed or will love it regardless. It doesn't so much matter. It's more about everyone, the mass audiences. And I'm just realizing that every single geek listening to this is thinking, oh God, that Matt Thompson guy, he's the reason they dumb everything down. I hate him.
Not at all. And I'll back you up on that, Matt. And to those people out there, and don't forget, we're you too. But let me put it this way, folks. You have to think where the filmmakers are coming from. How can they possibly, if they're going to do Mass Effect right, you're talking about a really, really detailed plot with a million variables of how things can play out and what decisions.
Not to mention a fair amount of backstory.
And that too, yes, that's right. But think about it. You own the story that you made in the games, and you're either going to say, I really hope that they do that story, or more likely you're going to be reasonable about it and you say, look, I'm flexible to change, but I've got this one part of the story which I really, really hope they make my choice, you know, and that kind of thing. And maybe they won't, but it's going to, you have to, and not envy the filmmakers, quite the opposite, and you have to say, it's statistically impossible to make a Mass Effect movie that's going to make every single right choice in its story for even one fan. If that makes sense. I mean,
I think one of the key things with it is to always remember, whatever the movie does, however it changes it, you still have that game. You still have your story. If you don't like what the movie does, go back and play the game. You're Shepard. Do it the other way.
And by the way, the real genius, I felt, of a lot of the choices, certainly in the first game, and I'm going to make one example in a moment, and yes, this will be big spoiler territory for a game that came out in 2007, but even when I saw the alternate choices, the choices that I didn't make, they still felt right in Stormflow. They still felt dramatically satisfying, and they still felt like a completely credible way for the story to play out. So in my, filmmaker head, the way I look at stories, none of them felt like a cop-out. The big example, and I think it probably is the biggest choice, the most dramatic choice that can be made in the first game, is right into the third act. We won't get into all the story points here, folks, but I'm going to let Matt guess. Uber fan as he is, Matt knows the sequence I'm about to talk about. Go on, Matt. Tell me.
There's a character named Rex who is an alien badass, by the way. Rex is awesome, but called a Krogan. Now, the Krogan have been inflicted with a disease, basically, that makes their birth rate something like, 1 out of 1,000? Or is it even higher than that? I can't even remember. But nearly all of their infants are stillborn due to this infection called the genophage. Well, on this planet, Rex has found out that the bad guy, Saren, because he wants to use the Krogan as an army, is developing a cure for the genophage. So Rex is pulled between, do we complete the mission? Do we stop the bad guy, or do I save my people? Do I guarantee our species continues? And Rex making that choice forces you as Shepard to make the choice of, can you talk him down? Can you change his mind? If you can't change his mind, do you kill him? And all of that is absolutely up to you as a player. All of your actions leading up to that dictate that conversation, and your actions in that conversation completely change not only Mass Effect, but the 2 games that follow.
And the choices specifically are, and Matt can correct me if I've missed any, but it is exactly that. Either you can talk him down, or you can shoot him yourself, or Ashley shoots him in the back and kills him for you, which is the darkest ending of all. But
my girlfriend got that playing Mass Effect the first time. She was not a fan of Ashley after that.
Oh, no, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. But the point is, folks, that, all 3 endings kind of made sense for me because, at least in that point in the story, Rex is the rogue element. He's, in your traditional kind of story, he's probably like the one who turns out to be a traitor because he's morally ambiguous. Mass Effect does it differently. It's far more complex. But still, it feels like, okay, it's the rogue element. You need to kind of get rid of him. We've got to have a body count here, otherwise there's no consequence. So someone's got to go. It's most likely going to be the jerk. Or it's the jerk who turns out he's got a golden heart and all that kind of crap. But whatever they do, it makes it seem right. And I have no idea, of course, myself, how the story plays out if Rex dies, because I literally... Well, I was a peacekeeper. I was always the kind of guy who was diffusing tense situations with words, and I spent a lot of time getting experience points in charm school and making sure I could talk people down and not throw people out of buildings and not go all nasty and stuff. You can do it. Again, that choice is up to you, but that just wasn't my way. And throughout the rest of the trilogy, I felt really, really vindicated because you get to see Rex, who's initially, of course, in a bad mood after that, after what he's done, because he feels like he himself has just sentenced his race to death for the rest of whatever future they have. He has taken hope away from them himself. He puts that burden on him, but he rises to be a great leader of his people. At the very, very end of the trilogy, him and Shepard reflect back on that confrontation they had and all they've been through and how things could have been different, and I felt really warm and gooey inside myself. But again, that's how great it is. That's just how one way it can go. And again, the game makes you feel you did that. That's on you. You actually earned this moment yourself. Well done. And you feel like it was the right choice. Oh, so you can feel how close we are to these choices we make. It's tough. It's tough to really separate yourself because they could very well make a movie where they make Rex... no, actually, I could say, as long as they don't make Rex completely two-dimensional. Like, if they screw up the character of Rex and make him completely two-dimensional just so they can kill him, just so they can, chop some elements of the story down, obviously then you'd have a right to be pissed. But as long as they do the character right, you can go any route you want with it. I won't hate you for it. Some people will, but I won't hate you for it. That's another question, though, Matt. If you can think of it right now before we get into anything else, is there a specific story point in the games which could go one way, could go the other, where you made a certain choice and you feel like it's got to be that way in the movies? I can't possibly imagine they're going to do it another way. Please make my choice, filmmakers. Is there a specific moment you can think of?
I have 2 examples of this, namely in the sense of how odd it would be for things to be different from us. Phil, we play different sexes for our Shepard. Commander Shepard to you is completely different to Commander Shepard to me. So one of us, probably me, is going to have to deal with a very different Shepard on screen right from the off because I played a female Shepard. So that in and of itself is a huge thing. But oddly enough, I'm going to hold back on the spoilers here because even if they kill Rex, I sort of understand it. The one choice that I suppose would really, really hurt me if they went the other way. It's about halfway through Mass Effect 3, so I'm going to be vague. But there's a certain point where you have two alien races warring at each other's throats outside of a planet. And you have two crew members who have been with you for multiple games at this point, who are conflicted against each other. And if you don't play it the right way, one or both of those characters will die, to the point where one of them can be executed by you viciously, sadly, and then have that character's race wiped out of existence immediately like that. If that happened on screen, which is completely counter to what I did, if that happened, yes, that would hurt me both as a moviegoer because I like those characters, and as sad as it sounds, I feel like it hurt me emotionally because I'm so attached to that moment and to how my Shepard dealt with it and what it led to in the future. That would hurt me a bit. How about you, Phil?
Oh, blimey. Well, no, I'm kind of like you, Matt. I was like, the specific choice that you're talking about, I did it a certain way just because, I don't even know how I was doing it. Honestly, I guess I was just picking the right words, and I was pretty good at it at that point, and I ended up getting, the best possible ending out of a really tricky situation. When I heard in subsequent podcasts and discussions just how badly it can go wrong, I couldn't believe it, and I'm pretty sure if, I'd ended up with that choice, there's no way to know for sure, but I'm pretty sure I just would have had to reload and start and just try it again, because there's no way I could have lived with that choice.
To kind of clarify for readers, one of the brilliance of these games is how choices from previous games impact later choices. For instance, in the Rex choice, how you've talked to Rex up until that point dictates a lot of that conversation. If you've been honest with him, if you've talked with him, he's more likely to stand down. Whereas if you haven't really talked to him, you haven't established a trust with him, it's more likely he's going to die. With this choice we're talking about in Mass Effect 3, you can't get the best ending unless you've played Mass Effect 2 a certain way. For instance, if you bought Mass Effect 3 blind on, say, PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 without having played previous games, you could not get the ending that Phil and I both got in that situation. And then I see clips of people executing one of those characters, or there's another character who sort of heroically is trying to help another alien race, to be vague here, heroically, but that could be counter to Shepard's needs if you play a certain way, where you can shoot that person in the back to stop them. It's just, it blows my mind. I love these characters so much. I physically could not hit the button to do that. I even to see what would happen, I don't think I could bring myself to do it.
To the specific choice that I think about, which really defined what the series could be, it was the moment where my mouth was agape when I was first playing the first game, because I literally couldn't believe how it steered away from a traditional video game cliche of the boss fight. At the very end of the game, folks, you've been chasing down this chap, this bad dude that Matt has referred to called Saren, and he's a bad guy. He's got the traditional floating piece of metal, like any kind of, like a Nintendo boss. He floats around on this thing, and he flies around, and he shoots laser beams at you, and you shoot at him, and he looks in every way like your traditional cliched video game boss. And what happened, and again, completely by accident, I don't know how I did it. I wasn't intending for it to go any other way, that I'd face him at the end and have a big boss fight. But what I ended up doing, because I chose the right dialogue, I actually talked him into blowing his brains out. And I literally couldn't, I couldn't believe it when it happened. Now, true enough, after that happens and he dies, the real villains behind him take over his body and turn him into an animated corpse, and you do have a boss fight of sorts.
But even then, it feels differently. Even if the choice was mostly surface, because you're still going to end up fighting that character, it feels different if you've actually convinced him that what he's doing is wrong and he tries to end it. It changes the context of that confrontation.
Yes. And it's also, it's very relevant to the whole story because there's this, we'll talk about them later folks, but the big bad of the series are these beings called the Reapers who can basically control you. They indoctrinate you, and what that involves for organic beings is actually kind of a Borgish process where you end up, if you stay under their control for long enough, you become more and more like metallicized, I guess. You get funny blue eyes and you get wires and stuff in your face and you don't look too pretty. And it happens to Saren as he goes along, and we realise in that climax that he himself is rather sad and pathetic, and what we were fighting all along was just a guy who was under someone else's control, and there's the risk that it's going to happen to you. There's a big theory going around that you've been under the control of the bad guys the whole time. Won't get into that, not yet anyway. And it happens also to another villain we'll talk about later, who becomes basically the main antagonist, with a face anyway, called the Elusive Man. So it's the idea that Saren commits suicide and releases himself from the Reaper's control is very, very vital, I think, to the story. And I feel like if there was a movie where it ended up with, a fist fight between him and Shepard instead, then we're kind of missing something. So that really would bum him out, and I know I wouldn't be alone on that. Definitely not.
Oh, God, no. It adds so much to Saren's character. It makes me reevaluate who he actually is so much. But also, I just want to mention it. Talking about Mass Effect as a film, just things I would be excited for on screen. So, as Phil said, the main threat in the Mass Effect trilogy isn't Saren, it's these villains called Reapers. And a big chunk of the first game is, the term, but you don't know what they are or what they do. There is a reveal in the first game of not only what the Reapers are, but just what one of them is. And it's such a staggering reveal that there's no way they cut it out of the film. I can't wait to see that on screen. Just seeing it dawn over an audience what one single Reaper actually is.
I agree. But Matt alluded to it a little bit earlier. Before we even get into the story of the trilogy itself and how you adapt it, and we do have some ideas, we need to discuss something which could kill this project before it even starts.
I know what we're doing.
Should the protagonist, Commander Shepard, be male or female? Now, I'd like to correct Matt on one point, that my first experience of the trilogy on PC, and yes, my Shepard was male, I plead complete ignorance on this because it did not make sense to me that such a seemingly arbitrary decision could actually be such a huge big deal and actually change the game and change the story. So I played it as a male character. When the trilogy then came later to the PlayStation 3, I re-experienced it again, and then I played as a female character then. So I have experienced it both ways. But the interesting thing is, because I experienced it for the first time as a male character, it didn't have the impact the second time. It was fascinating, of course, but it didn't. I don't have the attachment to it that you do, and other people do. So it is interesting. And let's face it, folks, the idea of, should the character be male or female? Should we headline a potential blockbuster franchise with either a female actress or a female actress? That's a good one. Either a female or a male. That's an especially prevalent topic right now. American commercial filmmaking has always struggled, for the most part, to represent women properly without it feeling like pandering. It's still a battle that we're fighting today. I maintain myself that obviously there are a lot more male screenwriters working today than there are women, and a fair few of them, certainly in blockbuster franchises, don't know how to write women. And there are clearly studies out there, by the way, that I'm not privy to by the studios about how much, for example, female characters should be implemented into marketing of commercial movies. Like, just look, for an example, at the poster for Tomorrowland, one of the posters for Tomorrowland, which contains George Clooney, and rather than the two female protagonists who also star in that movie, it's just George and the child version of himself. which is a bit of a head scratcher. You know, why aren't the female characters there? It's obviously a calculated move, but I don't know why. We can't think just because, like, the Hunger Games is successful that the battle's been won in that regard. And obviously there's still the issue of, you know, can we make a good female superhero movie or just make one, period, these days? And beyond that, there's a lot of foolishness being played out right now in regards to what is seen as improper representation of both sexes on film. Just look at the crap we've had to listen to for the last few weeks regarding both Avengers 2 and, on a personal level, what Matt's had to go to regarding Mad Max Fury Road. Movies that are both simultaneously being called anti-feminist and anti-men. I won't get into it, but
they just hate humanity in general. They hate everyone. Apparently.
I guess so, but it's still, I mean, it's something that, it's a voice that's being heard in media today and on Twitter and stuff, so this does count for something. It's going to be a decision that you're going to have to weigh based on what's going on right now. And by the way, while I'm on this little tangent, the video game industry is guilty of this too. If you see marketing or packaging for Mass Effect, it will have the male Commander Shepard on it. I think there's like an alternate packaging for 3, maybe.
Yeah, if you flip the label, it actually finally has FemShep on it.
But you've got to flip it.
Yeah, you gotta flip it.
So, I mean, just me and my ignorance when I first picked up the game, I didn't even question that I should be playing the guy on the box. I just thought, well, I guess that's what I'm supposed to be playing. I had no idea, first of all, that I could customize the character, because I was just so anxious to play it. I know, I was such a Philistine back in those days. But, you know, assuming you realize there is a choice, what may initially feel like an arbitrary decision actually turns out to be another layer of enriching the experience. So I played the trilogy as male, and I was totally satisfied, but there was this entire legion of fans out there telling me that the female Commander Shepard, also known as FemShep, is superior, has a much stronger voice performance, and they've played a whole different Mass Effect because of that. It's nuts. So, since the filmmakers can't make 2 different versions of the film, one with a male star and one with a female, although that's what the fans will probably tell you they should do. You can imagine that.
Just green screen whoever plays Shepard's face, just have someone wearing a green sock and just put in the female or male actor.
No, you just, like, every time you shoot in a scene, you just film it twice.
It's like the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone versus Sorcerer's Stone.
But on an insane level. It is, it really is. But I presume we can't do it. It would be amazing if they did that. It would be the ultimate fan pandering. And you know what? Maybe just on that alone, it would be great. Maybe people could... And then you get into, well, I guess I got to see it twice. Like, which theatres are screening the male version, and which theatres are screening the FemShep?
On Fandango, Mass Effect, FemShep, Mass Effect, BroShep.
FemShep sold out. Oh, I guess I gotta go for BroShep. It's like 3D or 2D. Anyway, should Shepard be male or female? Detaching ourselves from our personal preference, of course. What are the commercial risks involved with that? And will half the fans, even though we shouldn't be pandering to them anyway, hate you no matter which version you choose? Matt?
Boy, this is the tough one, because full disclosure for listeners, I am very attached to my FemShep. When I think Shepard, her face, the face I've been playing through all of those games, is in my head. But yes, I mean, whoever you pick, you are going to alienate a certain group of people. Now, it's interesting in the sense that the vast majority of people played male Shepard. As you said, he's the guy in the box. I started playing as male Shepard. I only played FemShep because I didn't enjoy male Shepard's voice for the first hour of the game, so I started over. But at the same time,
big stupid jellyfish.
but I would say that whereas the most players played male Shepard, the more vocal players played FemShep. I mean, would you agree with that, Phil?
I don't know. I really don't know that many people who've played it, to be completely honest with you. I really don't. I've always been alone. It's nice to have someone to talk to this about.
Nobody's listening to this part of the podcast. They're like, Mass Effect, what's that? And they jump over to the next segment. No, but looking at the story of Mass Effect, and I'm trying to be as kind of even-keeled as possible. Looking at the story of Mass Effect, for the people who don't know, the backstory of Mass Effect is that we, as the human race, we're basically stuck on Earth. And then we send out spaceships, blah, blah, blah. And on Mars, we find an artifact of an extinct culture that we call the Protheans. We use that artifact to rapidly develop our own technology, which leads us to finding these things called mass relays, which let us jump into space to where all of the other races of the galaxy congregate. There's a massive civilization. We've only been part of this civilization for, 30 years? 40 years, something like that. Humanity is very, very new to the universe. We're the perpetual underdogs. Nobody trusts us. Nobody really respects us. We're fighting for our place in every scrap that we can get. Now, me, as a major feminist and as someone who, in my own writing, I tend to enjoy writing women because I see in the world that women, God, this sounds bad, almost naturally are underdogs. You have men looking down at them. You have the wage issue. You have everything. Women, by and large, are more likely to be disrespected for who they are more so than a man is, just by virtue of their sex. I think that a female shepherd dovetails very nicely into the story of humanity as the upstart of being looked down upon by the rest of the universe. I think those themes weave together very nicely. So yeah, my natural inclination is I would very much like to see a female shepherd on screen. That said, I am very interested to see what you think about that, Phil.
I'm going to agree with it. I think it's going to feel like a superficial calculated move on the studio's part if you decide to go that way. Oh, they're just pandering to us. I mean, people who don't know the games would say that. They'll just say on a superficial level, oh, of course they're going to go with a female and stuff, and I'm just going to be like, could you please give them a chance? And you can counter that argument by saying, no, there is a lot of people out there who will tell you that the female character, both because of the personality that she has as a character, and also for the reasons that Matt mentioned, is far more compelling. So I say go for it. It's a way to get attention for the series. It is going to be. It could be a trailblazing movie. It feels ridiculous for me to say that, but
yeah, it would feel important.
And more than anything, I mean, the reason why I feel that it should be a female character is, it's really going to sound like I'm pushing some agenda here, folks, but in a lot of ways, Mass Effect itself as a series, it didn't push an agenda on us, but it certainly did things that no other games, in fact, no other media does. It deals with issues of sex and homosexuality head on in a way that is, welcoming.
They're certainly rather progressive games, for lack of a better term. They're very forward-thinking, I think.
It's one of the first pieces of science fiction I ever played where they actually, there's always this theory out there from certain science fiction writers that no alien creature could ever be conceived of by the human imagination because we always deal with them either in humanoid terms or as a blob. And we can't really think of anything else, but, there's theories out there that whatever aliens actually look like, we couldn't possibly imagine it. It's literally going to be something so far beyond our own DNA and our own evolution that we literally can't imagine it. And yes, we have characters, for the most part, are humanoid. They've got 2 arms and 2 legs, and that's fine, because Mass Effect is far more preoccupied with something else, which is the fact that alien races will not view sexuality in the same way that we do. And that really, really crystallized for me, folks, when I had a journey that I did in both versions of the game I played. Now, basically, you have an option. I say an option, but really, well, actually, you can avoid it entirely, I'm pretty sure, but you have an option to romance a character. If you talk to your crew long enough, whether they be female or male, whether you be male or female, by the way, as well, you will be able to flirt with these people. Commander Shepard, if she is female, can flirt with Ashley. They can have a relationship. It is entirely possible. Same way she can flirt.
No. Commander Shepard, female Shepard cannot have an actual sexual relationship with Ashley.
You're kidding me. I swore she could.
No, Caden, if you play Caden right through the 3 games, Caden can have a homosexual relationship, but Ashley cannot.
Oh,
Which doesn't actually bother me. I like the fact that some characters are straight, some aren't. It happens.
No, that's fine. I just kind of... No, that's true. Of course. I'm sorry. I'm thinking so two-dimensionally, but of course Ashley's not homosexual. So then that's fine. That makes perfect sense. But there are homosexual relationships. And more importantly, I found that when I was playing the trilogy initially as male shepherd, that, you know, myself, I just was immediately attracted to the character of Liara, who we'll talk about. Liara is basically, she's an alien. She's instrumental to the plot. She reminds me a lot of me. She's aloof, not always articulate. She's weird.
So, Liara was my romantic interest in all 3 games. Are you saying that I was romancing you?
Oh, I didn't think of it like that. That's true. Oh, man. Well, you can deal with that however you want it, Matt.
I'm suddenly very interested in meeting you more, Phil.
Yes, thank you so much. Let's turn this webcam on. No, that's... Well, the folks don't want to hear this. But it's so weird how we have this this simpatico thing with our playthroughs. But yeah, I romanced Liara. It just felt right because Commander Shepard is a bit of a loner to a certain degree, that he or she is on their own in saving the universe, and they're certainly on their own in the fact that they have certain, we'll get to it later, but they've had visions burned into their brain which make them instrumental in the conflict that's to come, and Liara's pretty much the only one who can decipher them. So they have that instant connection. It just felt right that they get together, and I never regretted it. Mass Effect 2 was so fucking heartbreaking for me because they spend a lot of that game apart, and every conversation they have, I'm like, where's the flirt button? Where's the can we get back together button? Can we please do this? And they let you come pretty close to that, but not utterly. So when she comes back and joins the crew in Mass Effect 3, man, I was all over it. I couldn't leave the girl alone. It was a bit crazy and a bit clingy,
Shepard,
and I'm not ashamed.
Shepard, hands off, back off. You're creeping me out.
Pretty much. But at the end of the game, at the end of the 3rd game, we're geeking out here, folks, but at the end of the 3rd game, when she finally says, I love you, it feels really earned. You know, because you've spent a lot of time investing in that. Not investing in a simulated relationship, but just I know I mean that very, very specifically, not a sex relationship. I just mean a relationship as people getting to know each other, people suffering through life and death and all of those life's hardships together, and love and loss and all of that. And it felt really, really earned. What was interesting was that when I played through my second playthrough of the trilogy on the PlayStation 3 as FemShep, I did the exact same thing. Because, folks, Liara is not male or female specifically. Her race does not work that way, and she really has no concept of heterosexuality or homosexuality in the way that humans do. That is a human concept to her. So myself, as I guess you'd call my shepherd a bit of a hippie, he wants everyone to get along and loves all the alien races and finds them all fascinating. I didn't specifically play my shepherd as a homosexual, as a lesbian, but I just thought, you know what, this just makes sense. You know, I do have an attraction to this person. It's not a girl to me. It's a person. And Liara, if I can even call her a she, does not have the same concepts that I do. Why can't I be more open as a person? You wish everybody could feel that way. So I romanced Liara again, and it still worked, and in no way did it feel weird. The really long-winded way I'm trying to get to my point, folks, is that if you, as writers of the material in a movie, approach it in that same way, maybe we can actually start to convince other people. You know, we can't have aliens. It doesn't make sense that these aliens with thousands of years of culture that we don't recognize have the exact same attitudes towards relationships and towards love and towards physical relationships and towards sexuality that we do. This movie can change the world.
And you know what? Just throwing it out there, if any studio executives happen to be listening when it comes to the FemShep issue, it's well known that women tend to stay away from sci-fi movies. They're probably going to be a little more interested if the lead is a female who they can, I tend to think a female lead is more interesting to women than, I'm a male, I'm leading the galaxy again. There's potential to bring in a new audience of people, especially in this world where, there's a reason Hunger Games is making $400 million a movie. We can make fun of the insurgents and the Twilights of the world, but there is a massive audience for big films starring women. And if you bring those people in, plus the gamers, plus the people who are going to see, oh my God, that looks like a massive science fiction film, which it would be, it feels like there's a huge amount of potential there casting a woman as Shepard as opposed to a male. Not to mention all of the story points that I think you brought up.
And it's not just that, folks, but certainly the whole theory and theme that's driving the first game forward is all about humanity's potential. We basically are, and I'll get into it a little bit later, but as a race, it's not the Star Trek universe. It's the Star Trek universe being that we, humanity, we're awesome, we're educated, we explored the universe, and we set up the Federation of Planets, and we brought all these savages into it. It's never been something I've been very comfortable with. No, Mass Effect is the complete flip. All these alien races, they're far more civilized than us, and they've existed fine without us. When we get into the wider universe, we find we're late to the party, and we find that we have to basically beg to be brought in to the council that runs everything, and we do, and our representative is Commander Shepard, who is throughout the whole trilogy shown as the beacon of humanity, the person who really shows everything that we are and we can be. It is so much more meaningful if it's a woman, because never in any of the game that I played or that I can remember was her sex ever brought up as far as her capabilities or as far as her position within the human alliance. No, it was all about the fact that Shepard is a person and Shepard is the best. Shepard is a survivor and Shepard becomes the best of what we can be. And sex is not an issue. Sex will be whatever we make of it when we see the film, but hopefully the film will, remind us, just as the game does, to check that shit at the door.
Oh man, definitely. Power on, man.
Guess we're on board on that. Yes, fantastic.
I'm good. I was expecting more of a debate on this issue. I'm really happy that you kind of see it that way, Phil.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I can't really. I'm trying to think what would be the reverse. I'm only thinking of it literally in terms of crash commercial expectations. What do we think? And you will know this better than me, Matt, because you're in the inside track. What will be the potential risks of doing it, of making it a female character? There have to be some, otherwise everyone will be doing it.
I suppose the risks would be, for one, executives do care a lot about kind of the core fan base, what they can do. One of the risks would be kind of the Ghostbusters reaction of how can you do this?
I keep forgetting that movie's coming out. I really
even to a degree, the Michael Jordan Fantastic Four of that's not the source material, that's wrong. Of course, that's bullshit because FemShep is very clearly in the first Mass Effect if you choose to play it that way. I mean, there would certainly be a negative reaction from a certain group of people, and it could be a loud negative reaction. But I do think both from a story standpoint and from a commercial standpoint, the perspective of bringing in a group of people who would not be interested in the film otherwise, I think it's the most exciting and very likely a more successful idea to cast it as a female Shepard.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Here comes the cliche question, Matt. Now that we've picked a female, who do you want? Because it's again, folks. I mean, we think that we've solved this little issue, but it's also the fact that you can customize the character. You can make it look the way you want. And I've seen plenty on YouTube videos of different looking shepherds, female shepherds. Everyone's got their own personal favorite look of how they should be. I think there's a set template which she's a redhead and she's got fairly short hair and she's like in her 30s and stuff, and that seems to be the template, but it doesn't have to be that way. She could be in her 20s as far as I can see. She could be in her, well, maybe not her 50s, maybe that's a bit too much.
I imagine her like late 20s in the first game, personally. I don't know. I mean, again, this is the toughie because I have that very distinct image of my Shepard in my head, who is kind of shorter blonde hair, a very specific face. I guess if I had to pick, and this is tough because we don't know exactly what personality they give Shepard in the movie because she can have varying speaking in the games. But I guess the first actress that jumps to mind, I think, of being able to be vulnerable when Shepard needs to be, while also being able to take charge when Shepard needs to, Jessica Chastain jumps into my head. Other than that, I'll just throw it out because I guess she gets cast in everything. Jennifer Lawrence, why not? But no, Jessica Chastain is kind of my pick. How about you?
Absolutely. I mean, assuming she doesn't play Captain Marvel, she seems like the right one. The other one I thought of, and it's a riskier choice because she's never really done anything like this, but I'm just such a fan of hers as an actress, and she was an it girl for a while, and she's kind of disappeared a bit, and I'd love to see her brought back. And I always thought, if they rebooted Tomb Raider as a film, she'd make a fantastic Lara Croft. Rebecca Hall's a really great actress. I'm a great fan of, and she's a real chameleon too. She's played a lot of different parts, and she's not really she give you the impression that she plays just ditzy girls if you look at a lot of her filmography.
Another one that jumped to mind, I guess she always does after Rebecca Hall, is like an Emily Blunt.
That's the one, isn't it? It's Emily. It's got to be Emily, I suppose. Yeah.
I feel like an idiot for not thinking of her immediately, but yeah, just Emily Blunt could rock.
She wears battle suits well.
Yeah, we've already known from Edge of Tomorrow she can totally pay off the badass thing.
That's the thing, I suppose. I mean, if we think about it as studio execs, if we're even going to make it a female, then at that point you really do need a certain amount of security. You need to pick someone safe. So I understand why Matt says Jennifer Lawrence half-jokingly, but Emily Blunt would be a safe choice. And the right choice. The safe choice gets a bad rap sometimes.
Yeah, the safe choice isn't always a bad idea. I mean, she's right for the part. We know she can carry a film like that. Sometimes things just make sense.
Absolutely. Right, folks. Well, I'll tell you what. We're going to call it a night. I'll tell you why. Because next time, what we want to do, or certainly what I want to do, if Matt will indulge me, I'm sure he's got ideas too, is we are going to go through the entire trilogy as a story and figure out, okay, how do we do this? What are these movies about? What do we keep? What do we lose? And what do we take away from it at the end? We are going to crack the story of the Mass Effect trilogy and see how you really could make this the next big franchise. This could be the next big thing. It really, really could. I truly, truly believe that. But it's going to take us a while to talk about that one. So we will beg your indulgence. We will be back next time on Memo to the Executives to talk about that. We hope to see you.
I got an idea for a movie.
Doesn't everybody?
Folks, I don't think my guests understand what this segment is supposed to be. The title is Cinematic Happy Comfort Food, and so far we've talked about Halloween, A Clockwork Orange, Aliens, and now my special guest, Mr. Spencer Perry of SuperheroHype.com, has chosen another really uplifting triumph of the human spirit kind of film. What film is that, Spencer?
An American Werewolf in London.
Fuck you for making me watch this. Seriously, you didn't know this, but this is pretty much the only film which still scares me.
Really?
Yeah, really. Why did you pick it, though?
Well, I was talking with a friend recently how horror and comedy are kind of on two opposite ends of the emotional spectrum. So if something's really funny, it makes you happy, you're smiling, it kind of uplifts you, and then when you're scared, you duck down and you kind of clutch yourself and you want to get away. And then when you can combine those two things effectively in a movie or a book or a show or whatever, it makes for this really interesting ride, because you might be laughing one second and then you want to turn away and not watch it for the next one. And I know a lot of people like the gold standard for horror comedy is like Evil Dead 2, but this is the one I go to for if you want to laugh and if you want to be like, oh my god, that is terrifying. But before I was working for Superhero Hype, I was working for our sister horror website, Shock Till You Drop, as an intern, and so like horror movies have always been like the thing that I've gravitated towards. Like even when I was in high school and everyone, because I lived in a small town, went to a kind of a small school, but everyone knew I was the kid that went to our school that worked at the movie theater, so everyone was like, he's the movie guy. But even though I was the movie guy, I wanted to be the horror movie guy. So I was always the guy that I could tell you about any of the Friday the 13th movies, Texas Chainsaw, whatever, Nightmare on Elm Street. And in becoming more of a horror movie person, American Werewolf it's one of those ones that it's definitely like top 10 horror movies for me, but it's just so great. I love it so much. That's why I picked it.
I agree. No, I can't dissuade from that. I think that one of the ways that I would differentiate it, though, from the Evil Dead films is that the Evil Dead films are comic books, and they are intentionally goofy, and we're not really supposed to care, in inverted commas, about the characters. We're just supposed to laugh along and point and laugh at Ash and say, that's not me. At least that's not me. This is more about... It's really about how the relationship between horror and comedy and how one can reinforce the other, and how John Landis in this case can use it as a weapon to subvert our expectations.
Yeah.
Because it is, and I think that's the genius of it, stories like this, and there's a grand tradition before this movie of films throughout the 30s, 40s, 50s, basically all of cinema, of the man turned into a monster. And if you're following the traditional template, they are tragic morality plays in which even if the man is good, the monster must be put down. Bad must be punished, penance must be paid for your sins. And that does happen here. And as soon as that happens, just like in those classic stories, cut to black, roll credits. Nothing else to say. And the audience probably even at the time knew that ending was coming, but the film flirts with comedy and romance and lightness of touch so well that you start to think, maybe it won't happen. Maybe things will turn out okay. Maybe it'll end with, Jack and Jenny Agutter on a tropical island like in Trading Places. Maybe things will be alright at the end. I think that's the real genius of it. And it is one of those films, I didn't see it as a kid. I couldn't have seen it as a kid. I just couldn't. But when I saw it as an adult, it worked for me in that way. It's weird how it was one of those films that I actually saw going in cold. I'd seen a clip of the werewolf transformation, obviously on like countless documentaries about best scenes and all that. But apart from that, I had no idea what I was getting into. Thanks a lot. I mean, like I say, it still scares the bejesus out of me simply because I am a sucker for boo scares if they work. I mean, I can see The Exorcist and I can be creeped and chilled and not have a good night's sleep. I could watch Cannibal Holocaust and have the same effect, actually. But as far as actually being fully frightened, it's just got boo scares that still work for me, that I still don't see coming. The one that worked again for me, it was only been a couple of months since I've seen it, but I'd completely forgotten that he does that horrible fucking trick. And he's a sadistic fucking guy, John Landis. He knows he's doing this, where you have the dream in a dream, where you have the absolutely horrifying massacre of the entire family by wolf Nazi soldiers of the SS or something. And then after that we cut back to, them waking up, and then and then Jenny Agutter goes to the window and there's another wolf man and stabs her to death, and then it wakes up again. That's just
one thing that I think's really genius about sort of, I don't know that I'd call them jump scares, because to me a jump scare it's when something that's not scary happens on screen just for the intention of startling the audience. I feel like the scares that happen in American Werewolf are designed to frighten and startle you, and they are also relevant to the overall horror and horrific nature of the film. So, like, one of my favorite ones is it's right after he's turned into the wolf for the first time, and he's running around, and there's a drunk couple walking around their friend's house, and they're like, "No, we're going to scare them," and they're standing out in like the middle of the grass, and I don't know if they've like shouted something at them or thrown something at the window, but they're both standing there laughing, and then just for a few frames, not even a full second, you see the head of the wolf come through, teeth bared, about to rip this woman's face off, and then it cuts to the people. Maybe it does one of those things where like it definitely cuts away, but I don't know if it shows him like chewing on them or like a ripped up hand or something, or if it then immediately cuts to the couple that they were planning on scaring in the house, and one of them's like, "There's hooligans in the park." And so, and then another thing that I really love, and it is the dream within a dream sequence, and what's so great about the Nazi werewolf thing, which I think if someone saw this for the first time and didn't know what it was, they'd be like, "What the fuck was that?" Like it kind of seems out of place if you don't know what the movie is or what it's saying, but it makes a lot of sense in regard to that. As soon as David gets bitten, he starts having these visions of him running through the woods and then ripping up deer, and then there's the one where he sees himself in a bed in the woods, and she walks up to his side, and then he like opens his eyes and he's kind of blue and he has the cat face and the claws. And then you get to the Nazi werewolf one, which is like it's like the evil of the curse of the werewolf is seeping into him and into his subconscious, and they establish kind of when he gets into the hospital that he's Jewish, so like the ultimate representation of evil to a Jewish kid who had grown up in the 60s and 70s is a Nazi. And if you combine a Nazi with what he's becoming, a werewolf, it's like the most horrific possible thing you could see, and then it just rips his family apart and destroys his home, and there's great subtext in that scene, and I think a lot of people that don't know what they're getting into when they see the movie, that might be lost on them.
No, of course, and the overall morality message of the movie is don't come to England because you'll be chewed up and spat out. The part of it that I took away from it really was that my mantra, actually the code that I lived life through, Spencer, is that we're all flawed, fallible human beings. I've always had a real problem with like authority figures for that exact reason, like in teachers and stuff, because it's like, you ain't better than me, stop pretending, we're all flawed.
I've done the same thing, yeah.
Oh, we're kindred spirits there. and just on last time Cinematic Happy Comfort Food, Ed was telling me that he was a punk kid himself, and that he had those exact same issues. And what I love about American Werewolf in London, and why a price must be paid, is because David is a goofy, lovable guy, but he does need to be punished because even if he doesn't know exactly what's going on initially, by midway through the movie, or certainly as we're going into the start of the third act, he knows what's going on, and he doesn't. I don't know what we don't know where he's come from, or why he can't just go back, or why he came to England in the first place. But like any of us, and I challenge any man on this, when Jenny Agutter says she finds you attractive, you're not going to listen to the crazy voices inside your head, which are saying bad things are coming. For God's sake, I mean, Jake warns him 3 times. The corpse of Jake visits him 3 times, each time in a worse and goofier and more hilarious state, and says bad things are coming. But you're just going to go for the one good thing you have going for you and just ruin her life too. And that's why he's got to be punished.
And you know what's great about, or what I found interesting about, it's the second time that decomposing Jack appears to David, was when it's when they're in her apartment and he wakes up and he goes to the bathroom and then he sees him in the mirror, and then they kind of go into the living room and they start talking, and then when she comes out of the bedroom, she says, "I heard voices." So she could hear both of them. I had never realized that before. So it was like that, when they're doing all these crazy visions in David's head and all these dreams he's having, and then they show decomposing Jack, I think they they want you to think that's just him hallucinating, or he's haunted specifically by Jack's ghost because of what happened. In that very quick line, they're saying that he's real. That it's not just David losing his mind. Like, if you're already that far into the movie, you already buy that the werewolf is a thing and that it exists, and that by the rules of this movie, werewolves are real. And then they very quickly say, "Oh yeah, and the ghosts are also real."
Purgatory is an actual thing. It really is real. Yeah, and it clicked for me the moment I saw all those people in the movie theatre. At that point I'm like, no, dude, David, you've got to sort this out. I'm sorry, dude, life sucks, but you do have to kill yourself. And he doesn't. That's a weird thing too. It's a story beat that never comes. Right at the end, you expect it to be like, well, kind of like the climax of The Wolfman from 2010, I think that movie. Yeah. No, 2009, I think it is. Yeah, no, it's 2009, that movie. And that you get that ending in that movie. You get the suicide in that movie, and in The Fly, of course. And it's so weird. I think it was because I'd kind of forgotten. Because I'd seen those movies, I kind of thought, or I'd just forgotten that at the end of this movie, at the end of American Werewolf, no, that doesn't happen. No, he's not in control, and he's not going to commit suicide, and he's not going to follow through the rules of what should be done. He's just going to get put down like a dog, and we'll never know if he could have done the right thing. That choice is taken away from him. It's a tragedy. But at the same time, I'm completely traumatized by that car pile-up just 5 minutes before. My God! I don't know where that came from, but it's just like, it's not even about the fact that this thing's a wild animal that's killing people, either in control or out of control, but it's just the consequences of that thing existing in London, in our congested streets, and just the bodies start piling up. It just has to be stopped. This got to end.
I was watching one of the behind the scenes things on the Blu-ray with John Landis, and he was talking about, I think that they filmed the Piccadilly Circus scene. It was one of the last things they filmed, if I remember correctly. But then he said about a month after they had filmed that was when some sort of riots broke out in London, and that they were blaming it on they weren't. Apparently, it was some sort of race riot thing or something. I don't know. I'm American. I don't have to know British history, but. And the news and the government were blaming it on like a group of hooligans or something, and he said it was weird how the images that were popping up from these riots sort of matched what they had staged in filming this movie in Piccadilly Circus. And apparently, things don't get to film there very often, so it's kind of amazing that they could even pull that off, that entire thing in that location.
Yeah. I think also that one of the things that I take away from the movie, and I'm going to call it what it is, I call this a British thing. I really do. I've lived in this country long enough, I've existed long enough to know that American Werewolf really speaks to something that is a problem for us as a race. Our complacency, our nature, the way that we deal with things is very much the way that people deal with things in this movie, in the fact that we stick our heads in the sand when we have problems, and that's exactly what happens in this movie. It's not just David who sticks his head in the sand and sticks his fingers in his ears, but it's also the police who, despite the fact that anybody with half a brain would be able to say, no, hang on, let's just think about this. This is why we have coroners. This is why we have forensic scientists. There is no way that the death of Jay has been caused by a man. There is no way. His entire half of his face has been completely ripped out by something with superhuman strength. It's not like David is saying, I was attacked by a werewolf when he talks to the police and the doctor. He says, I was attacked by an animal. I was attacked by a wild animal. I don't know what it was. That's perfectly credible, and yet no one will take him seriously on this except for the doctor, who actually does a little bit of digging, but only after like half of the movie is over does he actually get off his arse and do something. Before then, he's just like anyone else. I love the line where he says, David, try and keep sane, at least until you're no longer our responsibility. That's our country. That's our fucking country.
Well, and even when they're in the slaughtered lamb and they're leaving, and all of the patrons in the pub can hear the noises that the wolf is making out on the moors, and the bartender says, you have to stop them, or go get them, or go help them. And one of them even says, "Should the world know our business?" Yeah. Oh man, it's so great. And then like when I was rewatching it again a couple days ago, and they play that scene, and you can hear all these horrible noises that the wolf is making. I was like, this is the scariest fucking monster that I've ever heard. Like there are tons of monsters that, I don't even know about that, but because the wolf itself just looks fucking horrifying, but the noises that this thing makes in the movie are so fucking scary. Like if you were walking around and you heard that very distant kind of howl snarl, you'd shit yourself. It is the scariest noise that I've ever heard.
I also want to pick up something, you were mentioning this before, regarding the violence specifically, how much is shown versus not shown. And it is an interesting way of doing it that's done in this film, and I don't know if it is intentional. In fact, I'm pretty sure it wasn't, because obviously the first kill is of Jack, who we see full on, completely mauled, lots and lots of shots of his throat being ripped out, and then 2 close-ups of his completely bloodied, totally dead body. David the Wolf kills the 3 homeless people. And I saw an interview with John Landis, a fantastic interview, folks. You should, it's on YouTube, so I really recommend you check it out. It's a roundtable interview between John Landis, David Cronenberg, and John Carpenter.
Yeah.
You've seen it, haven't you? Yeah. It's on the Videodrome Criterion release. That's where I first saw it, but it's on YouTube now, so you don't have to pay Criterion prices. You can just see it on YouTube there, and it's fantastic. And John Landis talks there about how, he showed the full sequence of them getting completely mauled to death, and then he cut it out because it was too shocking. Apparently, like, the audience we were in hysterics and they weren't listening to anything that was going on for the next 5 minutes, so he cut it out. I don't think that footage has ever been shown. I certainly haven't seen it anywhere. I don't know about you, but because he does cut away from it, it ends up creating this rather interesting structure where you feel like, if you didn't know that story, John Landis is saying, okay, you've seen what happens, you've seen the bloody version, the rest of it's just going to be the power of suggestion, quick cuts, and there you are. And
the movie owes a lot to Jaws, and because Landis said in some interview that he wanted to not show the wolf all that much, but then when he saw Rick Baker's creation, he was like, well, now we have to show it at least a little bit because it looks so cool. But even then, it owes a lot to Jaws, because in Jaws, like, you see the fins. The music plays, like, you see its POV, and then you don't really see the monster until the very end of the movie. So, and what's really interesting about it was Landis wrote the script for American Werewolf in like '69, but never made the movie until like 1980. So, and he had been working with Rick Baker on something else beforehand, and showed him the script and was like, hey, take a look at this and let me know what you think. And then it took Landis so long to actually get funding for the movie and to actually get it made that Baker was about to do the effects on The Howling, the other like 1981 werewolf movie that everyone is familiar with. And apparently Landis threw a fit, and Baker let one of his proteges work on Howling while he turned to American Werewolf. So if they hadn't gotten funding for American Werewolf, what we see in American Werewolf would have been in The Howling, probably. Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about, Mr. Baker there, it's funny, the piece of work that I really want to give him credit for, it's nothing to do with the werewolf, it's Jack. It's, that's the best, literally, it is the best piece of makeup that I've ever seen. The first appearance of Jack, as dead Jack, where I honestly, I don't think some people can even sit through this scene. I just about manage it, but he is half of his face is Gone. And when I say gone, I mean literally gone. There are huge gaps where flesh should be. There is, best of all, this tiny little tuft of guts which just keeps flapping up and down as he moves his mouth and starts talking. And you know, it's a full dialogue scene, so it's a full close up on his face for minutes at a time, and you're begging John to cut back to David so we can stop looking at him, but he just won't do it. And I just don't know how they did that. I don't even know how long it took. I just know it's an incredible work of art.
Yeah, it's so great. And I'd always wondered where they had gotten the inspiration for that look of the wolf, because every other werewolf movie, it's always either like a bipedal, like Wolfman sort of thing, or it's just like a straight up wolf. But this is like a huge, giant bear tank monster, and
I'd forgotten how fat it is in the climax there. Yeah,
and apparently Rick Baker had a dog. They're called Keeshonds, Keeshond, and if you look it up, like, you can see exactly where this came from, because this fucking dog looks like the wolf from the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty nuts, and really there's only 4 or 5 shots in the movie where you can see the entire monster. Like, there's probably one of the most startling images in the movie, which is the guy is on the escalator in the tube going up, and then you see it kind of walk up very slowly in the very top of frame, and you see just enough of it that you're like, oh my god, that thing is fucking huge.
Yeah.
And then you see it in the porno theater when the policeman walks in and sees it eating all of the other people that were in the porno theater. And then when it's kind of walking around, and then at the end when it's in the alley. And I'm like, god damn, that thing is so big and it's so scary.
Well, I mean, I think, with that, the last thing to talk about is the transformation itself. I think that this is the first film to really convey to me what a transformation like that from man to werewolf, from man to beast, whatever it might be, would entail, because it's not about, a cheesy dissolve from human form and all of a sudden you're a monster, or stepping into a chamber as one thing and you come out another. What this is about, it's not about growing extra hair or morphing, it's about transmogrification, it's about a metamorphosis, it's about everything that would entail. It's about a change in bone structure, in DNA, till nothing of you is left, till you are completely unrecognisable. That is the most frightening thing I could possibly imagine, to be in utter agony, to be just begging for death and then not be granted it, and only worse, even worse than that, when you look in the mirror, if you even do, you're not even recognisable remotely. You can't, and that's true. I mean, I don't think it's not one of those horror movies where it's like, I can see him, I can see his eyes, he's still in there. No, fuck that. No, he's gone. He is gone. Okay, he's completely different. He's a werewolf. He's gone. It's tragic.
Yeah, and we should point out that the movie was the first movie to ever win the Best Makeup Effects Academy Award, and it's because of that scene. Like, that scene is so well executed and holds up so remarkably well, especially in comparison to everything that comes out today that's so kind of overridden by CG. And what's even more crazy about it was that, okay, Rick Baker wins the Oscar for it in '81, and then a couple decades later, he wins it again for another werewolf movie, the Wolfman remake, and you're like, that's nowhere near as good as the American Werewolf in London transformation. So, props to them for recognizing Baker more than once, but, he nailed it the first time. he knocked it out of the fucking park. And even more crazy than when you're watching it, it's just startling to see when his hand starts to stretch into a paw, and it's unsettling to see these images, but then also combining that with the noises of bones cracking and his skin stretching and the hair sticking. And it's not even like regular hair. It looks like it's thick and it pokes out of him like knives. And then how his screams start to turn into growls and howling. It's perfect. It's one of the absolute best scenes in a horror movie ever. Not even trying to be hyperbolic, but...
No, I completely agree with that. What would you... I mean, I've never had a perspective on this. I've never been able to guess why the choice was made. I'm sure we'll be able to figure out a reason. Why do you think Landis makes the choices he does in the film with music, specifically in that scene? Is it to basically, is it to basically mesh comedy and tragedy, or is it to just relax the audience to a slight degree and just make them realise, hey, it's alright? Or is it because, no, this is what would really happen, we're not going to play the cheesy horror hammer music, because this is real, this is the real world, this is how it happened? Or is it just because he's weird? I don't know. I've never known exactly the reason for it.
Well, one thing we should point out about the soundtrack is that every song on the soundtrack has Moon in the title, which is far more clever than the selection process for a lot of film soundtracks. But then the song that plays right before the transformation, Creedence Clearwater's "Bad Moon Rising," which is when he's it's when she goes to work and he's hanging out in the apartment by himself, and he keeps going back to the fridge and he's like, "I'm still not hungry." Yeah. And it has the lyrics in that song perfectly set up the entire rest of the movie, because it's I see the bad moon rising, I see trouble on the way, I see earthquakes and lightning, I see those bad times today, don't go around tonight, it's bound to take your life, there's a bad moon on the rise. He sets up the entire film in that montage sequence. And if you're watching it in that kind of playful mood that the music has, and you're like, oh yeah, he's bored, it's kind of funny, he doesn't really have anything to do, you might miss out on the message that it's and since it's a non-diegetic audio, it's only for the audience, he's not listening to that song, it's a warning to the audience, you might think that things are happy, he's just gotten laid by one of the most beautiful women on the planet, but shit's about to go down and it's not going to be nice.
There's a tagline. Well, Spencer, honestly, I know I'm just kidding. It is scary, but it is also filmmaking at its finest. It deserves its place in cinematic happy comfort food. So thank you so much for choosing it.
Oh yeah, pleasure to be here and talk about it.
Anyway, folks, so, what's happening in the... Oh, fuck it, I guess by the time we come back for our next episode, it's Jurassic World time. Good God, I am so dread... Yeah, it's out in 2 weeks.
They've been screening it, and they're holding the embargoes pretty hard, so that, to me, says, uh-oh, SpaghettiOs.
Yeah.
Not a good sign.
I am so... I get the feeling that I'm going to enjoy 5 minutes of that movie, because literally they will show 5 minutes of them enjoying the rides, and then the rest of it will just be some boring-ass shit where they're chasing one serial killer dinosaur. And Vincent D'Onofrio's yelling through monitors, which is a complete... I can't believe he's in it. That's such a waste of his talents.
Yeah, but he's thin. He's not fat Vincent D'Onofrio, so he could probably run too.
What does that mean? That doesn't mean... It still shouldn't be wasting his time in Jurassic.
I'm saying, he could probably use the exercise. I'm just saying.
Oh, fine. Oh, gosh. Well, we'll let you know, folks. We don't know for sure, of course. We don't want to be arrogant and presumptuous about this. It might be... Yeah, exactly. Boom, boom. Right, folks, so we'll be back next time. You take care of yourselves. Jen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me back.
I wish it was under better circumstances. Next time let's do Star Wars together, shall we?
Oh, I can't wait.
Awesome. I just get the feeling, folks, me and Spencer were talking about this, because it is a Star Wars movie. Do you remember people forget this, but the last time a Star Wars movie came out, Revenge of the Sith, I knew everything about that movie going in. I just feel like, because they've made a pretty big deal about it, like all the merchandise goes on sale in like September. They've been very clear about that. I just feel like with being Star Wars what it is, you'll have the children's storybooks and stuff. We're going to know everything about this movie if you want to know very easily before you see it.
I've heard a lot of it, and that because there are 20 books coming out on the same day.
Bloody hell.
That a lot of bridging stuff. Like, it's not necessarily going to be like the Force Awakens storybook. It's actually like there's
20 years or something.
There's 30 years in between the movies, so it's going to be a lot of bridging. Like,
I, for one, cannot wait for the Luke Skywalker prostate exam book.
We've reached that age. But, that's what I've heard too, because I'm like, I don't want to know. I mean, I've seen the trailers, I've heard, some stuff from the movie. I just don't want to know. I want to be able to just know as little as possible by the time December gets here. And
there's some movies I really want to see that are playing in my head right now that are just so perverse. Because Luke finally getting laid, and there's Yoda and Ben appearing in a hologram. Use the Force, Luke.
He's Luke Skywalker. He's not Wilford Brimley. It's like, you definitely have diabetes. Oh.
Oh my God.
Well, good luck sleeping, folks. We'll see you next time on Moon 2015. You take care.
Spoiler alert.